Ladies and gents, boys and girls, happy Thursday, September the 7th, 2023. Hope you're all doing well. Chris Phillips here, your host of the Daily Crow of the Spurs Up Show. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. We have got a jam-packed show here on this Thursday as we sit 55 and a half, I believe, hours away from kickoff as the Gamecocks take on the Furman Paladins. I see John Edward, GA, Ethan K, Hunter Kelly, Bryce Jeffcoat, Brendan M, Travi, Austin Gregory, Gavin. What's going on? Also, those in the Big Cock Club Discord, head over to the TDC Questions channel, to be sure your questions are answered there. It's been a very, very fun morning in the Big Cock Club Discord. It's been a very fun morning indeed, no doubt. Also want to say thank you to JC, JB, and Phil for having yours truly on Inside the Gamecocks. We just got off of there this morning. I see some folks commenting on JC Sherbert's rant about the running back position that he had this morning, to say that JC Sherbert is less than thrilled about the state of the running back room is putting it lightly. And I mean, who can blame the guy? It was one of the most epic rants that I've heard thus far about that position group. Either way, I see Marc Powell, Chase Floyd, C. Youngblood. What is up, guys? Again, thank you all so much for tuning in. We got a jam-packed show today. A lot to get into here on this Thursday. Of course, in our third hour, our Q&A Power Hour, taking all of your questions, your comments, your calls at 843-790-3377. We also have my good friend in our second hour, Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate. He will join the show to talk all things Gamecocks, SEC, everything in between. Of course, I know he's got a lot of thoughts on South Carolina, North Carolina, and, of course, the games this weekend. So we'll touch on that. And then, guys, of course, in this first hour, we're talking top storylines between the Gamecocks and Paladins, key matchups, and our weekly drive around the SEC, which I'll give my full thoughts on the entire slate of games. Some really intriguing games this weekend. And if you want to watch them all with us, you can do so in the Big Cock Club Discord, patreon.com/Big Cock Club, or click the link in bio to join the BCC today. You'll get access to the Discord. You'll get 20% off of merchandise. You'll get early access to content. You name it, you got it over at the Big Cock Club. Again, patreon.com/Big Cock Club, or click the link in bio to join today. Also, guys, do not forget the post-game call-in show will be happening yet again after the Furman game within 10 minutes of the conclusion of that ball game. It'll be right here on YouTube. You'll see it. We'll go live. We'll be taking your questions, comments, and calls just like we did last weekend. Should be a really good time breaking down everything Gamecocks and Paladins immediately after the fact. Again, guys, I want to say thank you all for your love, your support. Let me make you all aware really quickly. I will have more details to share on this as things get more situated behind closed doors, if you will. I know that the merchandise experience has been less than ideal for some of you, and I'll just leave it at that. We are working to correct that behind closed doors. I'm going to leave it at that, but we are working to correct that. I am committed to my end consumer. I am committed to my customer, and when we are falling short of the expectation and the standard that we have set, I'm not one to sit around and sit on my hands and wait and see how things play out. I take immediate action, right? I make the adjustment. I believe one of the great qualities of a great entrepreneur is to fail fast. Try different things, taste different things, but fail quickly and go with your gut. I'm going to leave it at that, guys. Just know I've got your back. I've got your best interest at heart. And I will not allow the standard that we have set here at TSUS when it comes to merchandise, when it comes to the way we operate in business. I will not allow that to be compromised. So just know I'll have more for you in the next week or two, but just know we are taking action to make sure we are giving you guys the absolute best experience, whether that be the podcast, the live show, the merchandise, social media, everything in between. Anything that's got my name on it, got TSUS on it, just know I'm giving you my absolute best. And if I'm not, I'm taking action to correct that. So, anyways, with that being said, like I mentioned, thank y'all so much for tuning in. The love, the support. Brew Nation says above average Gamecocks catching strays. No, he ain't catching strays, Brew Nation. Above average Gamecocks is just catching bullets that are directed right at him. I'm going to leave it at that. Guys, again, really exciting show. That being said, let's go ahead and dive into it because we've got a jam-packed week 2 of college football. Our drive around the SEC begins as we look at the entire slate upcoming this weekend. No Thursday games, no Sunday night games. All of these games are jam-packed on Saturday, and I cannot freaking wait. Let's start early in the morning on Saturday. And I posed this question in our Discord. How many of you college football sickos are waking up and watching Wake Forest and Vanderbilt with me at 11 a.m. Eastern time on the ACC network? Vanderbilt, of course, entering this game at 2-0. They've beaten down Hawaii and Alabama A&M, but this is the real test, right? This is the test for Vanderbilt. Heading out to Winston-Salem, an 11 a.m. kickoff, which is just really bonkers, if you want my honest opinion. Wake Forest comes in this game 1-0. They took down Elon by a final score of 37-17. This is a solid ACC program. But the big question is this: what is Wake Forest after Sam Hartman? Just looking over their stats, Mitch Griffiths, their new quarterback, went 19-30, 329, 3 touchdowns and a pick. Desmond Claiborne, who's a really good running back, 13 for 70 and a touchdown. Their leading receiver, Jamal Banks, 6 for 108 and a touchdown. They held Elon to just 104 rushing yards and 147 passing yards. But Vandy ain't Elon, folks. I'm expecting a really competitive game here. Wake Forest is a 10-point favorite in this ball game. And I will drop all my picks, of course, guys, tomorrow. We do that on Fridays. I lock in my picks for all the SEC games and, of course, South Carolina's game as well. But I am just really curious. I've got questions about Vandy on the line of scrimmage. I've got questions about Vandy in the secondary. But you've had 2 whole games to get that corrected. A.J. Swan at quarterback gives you a chance. I love the weapons they have in Will Shepard and the McGowan kid. I like the true freshman running back they have. This could be a really tight, competitive ballgame. And, guys, it's normally these slates. Of course, we've got the one big headliner, which we're going to get into in a second. But outside of that, there's some nice games. I mean, I wouldn't call it like a crazy good slate. But I just have this weird feeling that Vandy Wake Forest could be like a start to a wild Saturday. Like, I really feel that way. And what a big win it would be, guys, for Clark Lee's team if they were to get to 3-0 and the over-under win total was 3.5. Watch out. Watch out. Don't sleep on Clark Lee and the Commodores. Should be a really, really good game to start this Saturday. We move to Athens, the noon kickoff on SEC Network. Georgia taking on Ball State, a Ball State team, which, by the way, Kentucky beat them by 30 points. But if you actually watch that game and you go back and look, I mean, Ball State was hanging with Kentucky. You look statistically, Ball State had more first downs than Kentucky. The yards were very comparable. So this is a Ball State team coming in that they're not your typical pushover, but this is the University of Georgia. I think after a week of, and I think Georgia in week 1, guys, listen, I think Mike Bobo played things very close to the vest. I think they were very conservative. I don't think they did anything crazy. I expect Georgia to add some new wrinkles this week because, I don't think you want to go into SEC play against South Carolina. Granted, they probably think, the spread's probably going to be around 4 touchdowns for Georgia to take down the Gamecocks. But you don't want to go into that wondering what you have, right? Really not knowing what you have. I expect Georgia to add some wrinkles. Again, I'll lock in my pick tomorrow, but of course, I don't think I'm the guy that's going to pick Ball State to beat Georgia. But it's about how Georgia does it in this game, right? It's about how Georgia does it. How does Carson Beck look? How does the offense look? We all know Georgia's defense is elite. It's all about the offense and Mike Bobo and continuing to evolve with Carson Beck under center. I think you're going to see a lot of different wrinkles from Georgia in this game against Ball State this weekend. We move to Lexington, Kentucky and Eastern Kentucky. This is the 3 o'clock game on SEC Network Plus. Yawn fest. Kentucky's early season schedule is a yawn fest every single year, and that is this game as well. Kentucky's going to win this football game. Again, it goes back to the quarterback, though. How does Devin Leary look, right? Was not very good against Ball State. The whole Liam Cohen, Devin Leary thing. They've got Berrien Brown and Dane Key on the outside. Ray Davis is very good, but you're only going to go as far as your quarterback takes you. I think it's about getting Devin Leary going. Defensively, I don't really have any concerns with Kentucky there as well, but it's about winning on the line of scrimmages, getting Devin Leary going. If they can do that again, it's nice, right? To have the first 2, 3, 4 weeks of your season to build up and get your feet under you, and certainly that's what this game provides for the Kentucky Wildcats and Devin Leary, their quarterback. We move to the Tulane and Ole Miss game. 3:30 kick on ESPN2. Guys, this is a top 25 matchup. Tulane ranked 24th, Ole Miss ranked 20th. And guys, this has the potential to be one of the most fun ball games of the day. You already know I'm taking the over in this game. I'm taking the over. You look at what Tulane did in week 1. They've got their brand new OC, took down South Alabama 37-17. I think this is going to be one a lot of points will be scored. The big question I have for Ole Miss, guys, 2 things. On the defensive side, we've heard a lot about Pete Golding, the schematics of what he brought to Oxford. Did we actually see it flourish this week, or is Ole Miss still a ways off defensively? Offensively, continuing to see Jackson Dart show that improvement from the offseason. Of course, Quinshon Judkins, one of the best running backs in the entire country. I am so excited for this game between Ole Miss and Tulane. I think it's going to be offensive fireworks. This is one, I think, for Ole Miss. If they're going to hit that their goal of, let's say, getting to 9 wins, or, they were a team last year who looked to be legitimate early on, fell off late season. This is a big tone setter for the Ole Miss football program this season. This is a big-time game. It's going to be a fun matchup. Again, guys, like I said, I think this is going to be one of the most fun matchups of the weekend, watching Ole Miss, Jackson Dart, Judkins, their array of weapons on the outside, operate against a Tulane team that can score as well. I mean, do not forget, guys, what was it? Just less than a year ago, Tulane took down Southern Cal in their bowl games. This is not just some, whatever. And also, Ole Miss going to Tulane to take on the Green Wave. That's going to be a lot of fun. Guys, we move to Miami. 3:30 kick on ABC. Miami taking on Texas A&M. The Aggies, of course, a 4-point favorite. I've spoiled my pick by telling you I've got A&M -4. But as fun as it was to watch Texas A&M dominate New Mexico and the Bobby Petrino era in College Station getting off to a good start, this is the test, right? And Miami's not some elite team. They're not Alabama. They're not LSU. But, this is a game where all eyes are on that offense and seeing that offense get rolling, right? Seeing this Bobby Petrino offense, Connor Wegman, Evan Stewart, Anaya Smith on the outside, seeing that thing operating like a well-oiled machine. And if Texas A&M, it goes without saying, guys, if Texas A&M is going to have the kind of year that they want to have, that folks are expecting them to have, they got to beat Miami. They've got to beat Miami, bottom line. A good Miami program, by the way. Mario Cristobal, I think, doing some good things down there. They took down Miami of Ohio. They were dominant in week 1, 38-3. Tyler Van Dyke, their quarterback, a really, really good player. This is going to be a fun quarterback battle between Texas A&M and Miami. I just can't wait to see on the Texas A&M side, what does the offense look like? That's what it all comes down to, because A&M, they got all the talent in the world on the defensive line. They got one of the best D-lines, I think, in the SEC. The talent's all over, but it's about now starting to put that talent together and seeing some results on the field. Texas A&M, Miami, and Ole Miss Tulane in that 3:30 slot, those are going to be really fun to split screen and watch those 2 games. Arkansas taking on Kent State, 4 o'clock on SEC Network. I think for Arkansas, again, it's another cupcake game for them. They should have no problem with Kent State, but continuing to see the progression of KJ Jefferson, Rocket Sanders, the defensive side as well, that secondary, right? Buckling down in the secondary. I thought they did some good things in week 1, but continue to build momentum before they get in SEC play. Same thing with Tennessee and Austin, PA, guys, a 5 o'clock kick on SEC Network Plus. I thought Tennessee was one of the most impressive teams of week 1 when you look at what they did on the line of scrimmage, right? People want to pick apart, Joe Milton, this, the offense, that. They scored 49 points in a 49-13 blowout win over a Power 5 team. Tennessee now sitting ninth in the polls. Austin, PA, going to be another tune-up game. I think for them it's more about, continuing to get Joe Milton comfortable. Joe Milton continuing to sharpen his craft and putting touch on the football. There's no doubt about his arm strength. It's just about, can he throw the changeup? But also, hey, getting Nico in there, getting some young guys in there, finding your playmakers. That's what a lot of these SEC teams are doing, right? And, when you have these smaller opponents, lesser opponents you're going up against, it's about finding out your personnel. What do we really have? Who are we depending on? And I think Tennessee will have an opportunity. And this is a tune-up. It's a big tune-up for Tennessee, right? Big tune-up, because what looms next weekend? The road trip to the Swamp, a place they have not won in 20 years. We'll talk more about that, of course, next week. But a big one for Tennessee to keep positive momentum rolling and take that into Gainesville. We then move to primetime. And guys, the game of the weekend, this could be one of the games of the year, if not the game of the year. A 7 o'clock kick on ESPN. The Alabama Crimson Tide hosting the Texas Longhorns. Guys, this is a game I cannot wait to watch this. Admittedly, I'm probably going to have the Gamecocks game in the Big Cock Club Discord and have Texas, Alabama on the big screen. I can't wait to see this. I cannot wait to see this because, listen, so far so good for Alabama. Jalen Milroe, they dominated Middle Tennessee as you would expect. Give credit where credit's due, right? The question was about the quarterback position, and a lot of folks, I think, were thinking that, oh, my God, they're going to come out of week one unsettled. They're not going to know who their guy is, and I think right now, Jalen Milroe has a pretty firm grip on that quarterback battle. Tyler Buckner coming out second. That's a big takeaway also, the fact that he's sort of their quote-unquote security blanket at the QB2 spot. Ty Simpson is at QB3. But Jalen Milroe is a guy, when he's on the field, he is the best athlete, right? We saw that in the snap that went behind him. He picks it up. He runs it in for a touchdown. We saw him put touch on the deep ball. Now it's about doing it against competition that is on your level. And Texas is all of that. Listen, I understand the Texas is back thing is so worn out that I think a lot of folks are not going to give Texas a chance in this football game because of that worn out narrative. Here's the thing you have to remove yourself from. College football fans, I'm guilty of this. You're guilty of this. We all do it. People love to cling to old narratives to make their points in the present. And the fact of the matter is this, guys, nothing that's happened with Texas beforehand, the whole Texas is back and they fall flat on their face, that has nothing to do with this team. I think this Texas team is legit. I think they've got the bodies on the interior, on the defensive side to give Alabama some fits. Here's the thing, though. We're going to find out. Nick Saban and company, their offensive line, their players, they've been talking bully ball all offseason long. And I think Alabama's really committed to it. But we're about to see, does it work? Is it going to work? Is it all talk, or are they going to walk the walk? And for Texas, a team that, of course, they want to make a splash, right, going into the SEC next year along with Oklahoma. But this is a great opportunity for Texas to show, hey, we're not just coming to the SEC to be another member. We're coming to flourish. We're coming to win a title. And this is an opportunity for them to make that statement. Quinn Ewers, Steve Sarkisian, again, what they have on the defensive side. Love Xavier Worthy, obviously, on the outside at wide receiver. And I'm just so pumped to watch this game. I think no matter who wins this ball game, it is going to be a really competitive back-and-forth game. I mean, it's Alabama, Texas, man. What more could you ask for on a Saturday night? The college football world is going to have their eyes on this one between the Crimson Tide and the Longhorns. We move to Como. Speaking of earlier in the show, Middle Tennessee State University, they take on the Missouri Tigers on SEC Network Plus, a 7 o'clock kickoff, as we mentioned, at Thoreau Field, which, side note, I thought it was Farott Field forever. I was today years old when I learned it's Thoreau Field. I feel like a goober for that, but either way, I guess I am. Anyways, Mizzou and Middle Tennessee State, again, another tune-up game. I think Brady Cook continuing to solidify that he is the guy. There's no secret or there's no confusion who QB1 is this week. Missouri should win. They should win big, but it's an opportunity again for them to continue to build some things, get Luther Burden, I think, more involved. You could even get Joe Horn, their backup quarterback, some backup snaps, if you will. And, I think it's just an opportunity for Mizzou, again, to continue to build the football program and build their team in this season. LSU and Grambling, a 7:30 kickoff. SEC Network Plus. For LSU, it's about bouncing back, man. Grambling is not going to present much of a test. And I'll say this, while the college football world is pronouncing LSU as dead, I don't do so. I think everything is still in front of LSU. They can still accomplish everything they want to accomplish this season. They ran into a buzzsaw, which is the Florida State Seminoles. And the Florida State Seminoles are for real. They are legit. There's no denying that. We're going to hold Marc Ryan accountable to that later in the show. Everyone should be held accountable, including myself. I didn't know that Florida State was like that. What's that Shaq quote, that Shaq meme? I'm sorry, I did not know your game. I did not recognize your game. That's how I feel about Florida State right now. So for LSU, it's about bouncing back. I think they do so in a big way, but just getting back on the winning side of things, getting some good feelings back, getting that nasty taste out of your mouth that FSU loss left. That's what LSU is looking forward to on Saturday night. Florida and McNeese, ESPNU, 7:30 kickoff. Speaking of a team that is looking to bounce back, the Florida Gators, after a tough one against Utah. I think the extra prep time for this one's going to help them a lot. It's all about getting that running game going, man. If they don't get Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne rocking, Graham Mertz simply does not have a chance. It's similar to South Carolina. Line of scrimmage issues. You got to block. You got to stop the run. Florida's got to get back to that. Their only chance, I think, to win 7 or more games this year is to ride that running game. Don't ask Graham Mertz to do too much. They got some young receivers. I think they'll get involved as well, along with Ricky Pearsall. And then Austin Armstrong's defense. I would expect Florida guys to bounce back in a big way in this one. I think Florida's still loaded with talent. They will enjoy getting back home to the friendly confines for sure. Mississippi State and Arizona on SEC Network, a 7:30 kick. Mississippi State, a 10-point favorite in this ball game. It's all about the continued evolution of the Kevin Barbay offense. Will Rogers getting more comfortable. You had that first game against Southeast Louisiana. Arizona is not very good, but it's a team more so, hey, Power 5 opponent, more so on your level. How does the offense operate in a game like that, guys? I've already gone on record and told you Arizona plus 10 is my play. I like Mississippi State a lot. I like what they have in the running game. I like both lines of scrimmage. They're going to be stingy defensively. I'm a fan of Zach Arnett, what he's doing in Starkville, but early in the season, that Kevin Barbay system, things are still kind of a work in progress. It could be an interesting ball game down there in Starkville. South Carolina Furman, guys, of course, 7:30 SEC Network Plus. We're spending all week talking about that one. And then finally, guys, the final game. We got some West Coast football. So literally, guys, from 11 a.m. to 10:30 p.m., we've got SEC football on Saturday. Auburn travels out to the West Coast to take on the California Golden Bears, an ESPN kickoff late night on Saturday. Again, so far so good for Hugh Freeze. Taking down UMass, did what you were supposed to do. This is a big opportunity. They're favored by 6.5, but anytime you got to cross multiple time zones, it's a tough one. It's a tough game. Cal's not a great team by any stretch of the imagination. This is a football team that started off their season on the right foot, won that game 58-21. I've got the over. Again, they beat North Texas down really good. I think points will be scored in this one. They've got TJ Finley as their quarterback, I believe. Actually, no, excuse me. That's North Texas's quarterback. I apologize. Ben Finley. Look at me. TJ Finley. Ben Finley is their quarterback. He was really good in week 1. I think this is going to be a very fun way, guys, to end the slate on Saturday. Continuing to see the progression of Peyton Thorne. How do they use Robbie Ashford? Is he once again a red zone threat? And again, this is another one of those games early in season, could be a tone setter. If Auburn's going to get to, let's say, that 8-win mark and overachieve in year 1, you feel like this is one of those swing games that Auburn needs to have, but should be a fun one and a fun way to end week 2 of the SEC slate with what I think is going to be some offensive fireworks out there on the West Coast in California. So, guys, from 11 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. Eastern, it is going to be a wild weekend of college football in the SEC. Guys, that being said, let's jump into our first break of the day. On the other side, I want to keep the conversation rolling here on this Thursday. You're tuned in to to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose, while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Thursday, September the 7th, 2023. Again, guys, appreciate you all tuning in as we're talking Gamecocks, SEC, everything in between. Do not forget our third hour, the Q&A Power Hour. We'll take all of your questions, your comments, your calls at 843-790-3377. If you can't call in that third hour, go ahead and leave us a voicemail right now, and we will get to that at the start of the Q&A Power Hour. We will also have my good friend Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate. He will join the show in hour number 2. Looking forward to discussing everything with him. But in the meantime, guys, like I mentioned, we're keeping the conversation going. Gamecocks and Paladins set to do battle on Saturday night. We're talking top storylines heading into South Carolina's home opener as the Furman Paladins come to town, guys. And we start with Furman. And the fact that, Cupcake Saturday is something that's thrown around a lot, whether it be the week before rivalry weekend or opening weekend for some or what have you, that term cupcake when you're playing a lesser opponent, whether it be an FCS opponent or, a lower ranking Power 5, whatever it might be, right? A team that is not necessarily on your level. I'm here to tell you, this is not your typical cupcake opponent. And if you don't want to believe me, you don't want to believe others that talk Gamecocks and talk college football, how about believing Shane Beamer? Because he is the one that came out this week and said, hey, we better buckle up. This ain't coach speak. This is a good football team. Shane Beamer had this to say specifically. Quote, if you actually study the game of football and know what you're talking about and watch football, you know that this is a hell of a football team coming in here this weekend. That is not coach speak. Now, I'm not saying this to scare you or tell you that South Carolina should lose this game or even that this should be a one-score game or a close game. All that I'm saying is, this is not your run-of-the-mill. This is not Eastern Illinois, right? This is not Georgia State. This is a very solid football team. You look at this team, a top 10 FCS team, led by a veteran quarterback, led by an all-conference running back, led by, 3 returning receivers who are really good, led by 3 of 5 returning offensive linemen, one of those guys who was a preseason All-American, led by 3 of 4 returning starters on the defensive front, led by 2 returning linebackers, led by an all-conference defensive back. 38 of 44 are back from Furman's 2 deep a season ago, a Furman team that went to the FCS playoffs. Again, I'm not telling any of that to you to tell you that this should be a 7-point, 3-point ball game in the fourth quarter, or South Carolina fans, you should be nervous that the Gamecocks are going to lose this football game. That's not what I'm telling you. But what I'm saying is this: if South Carolina comes out and does not handle their business, if the adjustments are not made from week 1 to week 2, don't be surprised. Don't be surprised, because this Furman football team, they will not blink. They will not bat an eye. They will not be phased. This is a team that went into Clemson last year. Yes, they lost by 23. I totally get it. But they gave Clemson all they wanted and then some, right? Outgained the Tigers in that football game. I'm just saying, this is not your typical cupcake. I know people are sick to their stomachs hearing all week long, hearing about how good Furman is and what have you, and the fact that all of that offseason hype and momentum has now culminated in us talking about how close the Furman game is going to be. But after South Carolina's performance in week 1 and what we saw on the field and the fact that Furman is a quality football team, this is not one you can just roll your helmet out there and take it lightly. And the Gamecocks are they're just worlds better at every single position. And I don't think you can look at this football game that way. That being said, guys, we move on to the field. And I mentioned the offensive front. You have to start there when talking about the storylines for this game. And I say there's nowhere to go but up for the offensive line. I mean, guys, when you have -2 rushing yards and you surrender 9 sacks and you surrender 16 tackles for loss, you have nowhere to go but up. I am so curious to see what they do in regards to personnel for the offensive line, right? Because you heard Shane Beamer on Tuesday, You heard Dabble Loggins yesterday. It's like, this is still a work in progress, guys. This is a work in progress, right? And I don't think, we mentioned this earlier in the week. I just, the thing that concerns me is I don't know where the answers come from. If I ask you right now, why is the offensive line going to be better this week? Why is it going to be better next week against Georgia? Why is it going to improve? I mean, there's nobody really waiting in the wings that I think is going to be inserted that's going to be the answer. Like, you don't have a deep bench of guys who have a lot of high quality SEC experience and have played really good football for you. So you're almost just kind of left asking guys like Sidney Fugar, Jackson Hughes, Nee Manziel, Tyshawn Wanamaker, Vershawn Lee, and even Nick Gargiulo. Like, you're left asking them simply to play better football. And I think what's concerning is if that's the methodology, if that's the way you're going, and hey, we might see, unfortunately, Marquis Anderson is not healthy. We might see a Trovon Bow or a Big Tree Babalade get in there and, get those guys' feet wet and just see what they can do. What's concerning to me is this: how much better can the offensive line be 7 days, just 7 days after giving up 9 sacks? How much of a jump can they make? Now, granted, I think it's safe to say that Furman is not as good as North Carolina on both lines of scrimmage. But I mean, we are all very anxious to see how the offensive line responds. Nobody's saying you got to rush for 300 yards or give up 0 sacks, although that'd be ideal. But there's got to be a major jump in production, man. There has to be a major adjustment made, whether it's those same 5 playing at a much higher level, whether it's mixing and matching and moving some guys around, or whether it's just completely replacing those guys who were your deficiencies in that ball game against UNC. Whatever it is, South Carolina has to start to find some answers on the offensive line this weekend, because if they don't, it doesn't matter whether you win or how much. If you come out of that Furman game saying, man, I don't feel that much better about the offensive line than I did going in, doesn't bode well going into SEC play as you go between the hedges in just over a week. Guys, injuries have been a big talking point over the last couple of days, last week or so. What is the status of Juice Wells, Nick Emanwari, and Jatius Gear going into this football game? And guys, I mentioned this earlier today on Inside the Gamecocks. I am done guessing the status of guys, whether they're going to play, whether they're not. I would expect for sure Nick Emanwari and Jatius Gear not to play, although who knows? And then Juice Wells is the big one. I guys, personally, don't see why you would put Juice Wells out there. I don't see why you would. This is the week to rest him up, let the foot rest, and get him healthy for the start of SEC play. Because guess what? If you lose to Furman, whether he plays or not, the season is a wash anyways. And this season, it was never about beating Furman by 50. Like, that doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, right? SEC play is what you're judged off of. The North Carolina game, what you're judged off of. You're not judged off Furman, Jacksonville State, what have you. So I don't understand after, we heard the Shane Beamer injury report. Juice Wells is practicing. He's fine. Basically Beamer calling out everybody on social media that was doubting his status. Juice Wells had 1 target, 0 catches, and couldn't last the entire game. He ain't good. He's not healthy. Why he would play, I don't understand it. But still, it's a storyline as we await and we see what the status of those 3 players and more are, by the way. Bam Martin Scott's another one. David Spalding's another one. The laundry list of injuries, if you will, going to be interesting to see who goes and who does not on Saturday night. Sticking with the offensive side, guys, Spencer Rattler, I thought, was masterful given everything that happened and took place in that first game against North Carolina, the protection or lack thereof that he had at his disposal, the lack of a balance with the running game also that he had in that first game How is Spencer Rattler able to build off of a successful week one, right? Because the offensive line's the focus. But I want to continue to see that progression from Spencer Rattler. And I understand that he should have a successful game. He should flourish in this ball game against Furman. A Furman pass defense, by the way, guys, that ranked outside of the top 100 in pass defense, that being at their level. So South Carolina should have the opportunities for big plays downfield. But I think this is a really important game for Spencer Rattler because even last year, early in the season, even against the lesser quote-unquote competition, Charlotte, SC State, he didn't look all that sharp, right? For Spencer Rattler, it's about building off of week one, right? 30 of 39, 353. You didn't throw a touchdown, but you didn't put the ball in harm's way either. I think if you can see Spencer Rattler build off that, continue to show that efficiency, continue to show that he's going to protect the football while also tossing a couple of touchdown passes, I think that's going to be huge because you know what, guys? Early in this season, you might have to battle deficiencies on the offensive line. You might have to battle deficiencies in the running game. But if you're going to pull an upset at Georgia or you're going to beat Mississippi State or pull an upset in Knoxville or whatever it might be, you know where a great place to start with that is? Having a supremely confident quarterback. And if Spencer Rattler can build off that week one performance, continue to build that confidence, show that he's raised that floor, he's much more efficient, he's taking care of the football while also playing his style, right? And throwing the football down the field and giving his receivers one-on-one chances. I think it bodes well for South Carolina. At least it gives you the best possible opportunity entering SEC play because even while you may have deficiencies offensively, if you have a confident Spencer Rattler, you like to think you have a chance. Guys, offensively, South Carolina, like I mentioned, they're taking on a Furman team, finished outside of the top 100 in pass defense a season ago. Granted, they were top 20 in rush defense, but really struggled to stop the pass. Can South Carolina find success in explosive plays downfield? You've got the weapons, right? I mean, nobody's going to sit here and debate that you don't. You know, whether it be at your tight end position with Trey Knox, Joshua Simon, it be at wide receiver, even if Juice Wells doesn't go, what Xavier Legette in week one, what he did, you know, how's he able to follow that up? But you got Legette, you got Amarian Brown, heck, Luke Doty looked good out there. You got Eddie Lewis. I don't know where he was last week. You got Nicholas Harbor, who I know people are itching to see on the field. You have enough to be explosive in the passing game in this football game, right? You should have the athletes to expose Furman in that facet. If Spencer Rattler gets even a semblance of time in this football game, you should have enough to make some big plays and have some reason to shoot off some fireworks at Williams-Brice. So I'm really excited to see. Also, I'm excited to see the tight end position, right? Throw it to the tight end more. I don't know that the tight end position, you know, it's hard for me, guys, to say it was underutilized last week because, you know, when you have that much pressure up front, the offensive line, it's just a jailbreak. You know, you're not able to really utilize anything. But how is Dowell Loggins able to scheme something up where this offense is going to explode and have a big-time performance? And how is he going to be able to scheme something up where they're pushing the football down the field? Also, I should have mentioned this earlier. How does he scheme around the offensive line, right? How does he scheme around that? Because at some point, what you got's what you got, and you got to find a way to still be productive despite it. And I know that's much easier said than done because if you've got a weak offensive line, it really limits what you can do as a play caller and an offensive coordinator. But South Carolina has to find a way, right? You have enough weapons on the outside. You're going up against Travis Blackshear's a great player on the outside for Furman, by the way. Let's point that out. He's a great defensive back. But the rest of that room, it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle. So South Carolina, are they able to find success in an area that you feel like they should? That be explosive plays down the field with South Carolina's athletes winning one-on-one matchups. Guys, speaking of the running game specifically, and I thought J.C. Sherwood on Inside the Gamecocks this morning, we've talked about this on my airwaves, he hit the nail on the head when talking about the running game and the running back position and how it's flat out unacceptable, what it is, what it's become. And I'm not afraid to say Monterio Hardesty's name, and the fact that if it doesn't improve, his ass ought to be gone. I mean, this is embarrassing. The recruiting hasn't been there. you don't feel like running backs are improving during their time at South Carolina. So again, I'm not scared to say the name Montario Hardesty. It's got to get fixed, and it's got to get fixed quickly. Are we able to learn more about the running game and the running back room specifically in this football game? And more so from the point of, do we see more personnel take the field? I mean, guys, I like Dakereon Joyner a lot. There's not a Gamecock fan out there who does not admire Dakereon Joyner for the Gamecock that he is. And when you are, I don't even want to say critical, when you talk about the running back room, it's not the fact that anybody's doubting Dakereon Joyner. It's the simple fact Dakereon Joyner should have never been put in this position. He should have never been asked to carry the load. He should have never been asked to be RB1. The fact that he's having to do this, and it's not his fault, but it is just complete roster mismanagement and malpractice. It really, truly is. And so you played two running backs last week, Dakereon Joyner and Juju McDowell. Why did you even go get Mario Anderson from the portal if you weren't going to play him? Why'd you recruit Dontavius Braswell if you're not going to play him? This is a game, I think, we could see some different personnel, but you've got to find some answers in the running game. Is Dakereon Joyner going to be 15 to 20 carries a game and be truly RB1? Are you going to continue to split it up? Like, we talk about this a lot in baseball, right? Like early in the season, establishing roles, right? Defining your bullpen roles and your designated hitters and your fourth outfielders and the lineup and all that good stuff. Like, that's what South Carolina is doing here. And that's what specifically they're doing in the running back room. And it's unfortunate that we're saying that going into the second game when that's really something that should be figured out in the preseason. I think we'd all agree. But against Furman, it's an opportunity for South Carolina to figure out, okay, continue to learn, I should say, what do we have in the running back room? Especially outside of Dakereon Joyner, Juju McDowell. Are there other guys that can help us? Because South Carolina, guys, if they're going to even get to 6 wins, you have to find a way to have some semblance of a running game. You're going to have to run the football, guys. You're going to have to run it. Who's going to be that dude? And it starts up front with the big uglies, no doubt, but you got to figure something out in the running game and the running back room specifically. Moving to the defensive side, guys. Top storyline on that side, or one of them. How does Carolina create a disturbance up front? After a game in which you generate a grand total of 0 sacks and just one tackle for loss. Just one. In a game in which UNC had 16 and 9 sacks, by the way, as we all know. Do we see South Carolina try some different bodies, do some different things up front? Do we see Clayton White call things more aggressively? Because similar to the offensive side, this is a game in which if you can't win in the trenches against Furman, with all due respect to them, if you can't win in the trenches, boy, oh boy, strap in, Gamecock Nation. We are in for a long year, right? It's time for guys to step up. Boogie Huntley, Tonka Hemingway, Jordan Strawn, Drew Tuizama, who they just added from UAB. Is Jatius Gear going to play? We shall see. I highly doubt it. How about a Desmond Umeozulu? How about a TJ Sanders? How about a Nick Barrett? Like, there's enough talent in that room to get more out of it than what you've seen. And I hate being right, guys. I really do. What did I say in the preseason? I think I graded the defensive line a D+ or a C-, something like that. But every year, it's a tale as old as time. We spend months hyping up the D-line. Man, this D-line, they're going to be top half of the league. Look at the athletes. And they just never live up to it. And we don't understand why. If this is going to be a supposed, quote-unquote, get-right game, it needs to be a get-right game for the defensive front. It needs to be a get-right game for those big uglies on the defensive side in the trenches. Winning one-on-one battles, creating pressure, wreaking havoc. And you know what? If those front four can't do it, find creative ways to get pressure. Because Tyler Huff, Furman's quarterback, is coming. Dominic Roberto is coming. That offensive line is coming. Like, Furman's not going to be intimidated by South Carolina's defensive front after they watch the tape of what they did against UNC. We talked about one of our keys to the game. Low man wins. Establish you're the low man. Establish you're more physical. Establish, hey, there's a difference in SEC size and speed and physicality than what you're used to. South Carolina has to create some sort of disturbance up front. Guys, it's a really unfortunate situation with linebacker Mo Kaba and being out for the year. And I mean, it's a cruel game. It can be a really, really cruel game for some. But the fact of the matter is this, just like last year, South Carolina has to move on. Who emerges in Mo Kaba's absence? I thought Debo Williams was really good at linebacker last week. Stone Blanton was flying around. But now, where do you go, guys? You need Bam Martin Scott back healthy, right? He can help you. Grayson Pup Howard, welcome to the big leagues. It's time for him to play. He's got to play, right? They got to get him some reps. They got to get him some experience because they're going to need him, right? Because Jerron Willis, where are you? The Ole Miss transfer. Where is he at? He's going to have to get in there and make some plays. And we saw last year, guys, when Mo Kaba went down, and I know Jordan Strong went down with him, but when Mo Kaba went down, this rushing defense went to poo-poo. It went gonzo. It went bye-bye. The rushing defense was no more. Is that going to be the case yet again, or is South Carolina able to combat that? And maybe a Grayson Pup Howard, this is his breakout game, and he emerges as a true freshman, and, he steps up in this ball game. But they got to find somebody. They got to find somebody to step up, step in, and make an impact in Mo Kaba's absence. Guys, you look at the secondary. I'm looking forward to seeing this group continuing to build depth in this ball game, right? Because there's a good chance Nick Eamon-Warry is not going to play. So, who steps up? I thought Jelon Kilgore was really solid in that UNC game, a true freshman, a guy we were all high on coming in this season. Keenan Nelson Jr., that's another young guy. Listen, he's not a true freshman. He's a redshirt freshman. He's got to play better. It burnt toast last week. He got burnt left and right, all up and down the field. He's got to play better. He's got to evolve. This football team needs him. BJ Gibson, his continued evolution at the safety spot. We know depth is an issue. Great opportunity in this ball game to build some depth, to get some guys some reps, get them experience. The secondary is the strength of the defense. But, guys, 2 years in a row now. I saw it against Georgia and saw it at times when he went out. We saw it against UNC. The second you pull Nick Eamon-Warry out that secondary, things tend to go sideways. That can't be the case this week, right? That can't be the case. Continuing to build depth, I should say. Guys like Jelon Kilgore, Keenan Nelson Jr., big pieces involved in that. Excited to watch them this weekend against Furman. How about Furman's knack, guys, for special teams? That's another big storyline in this one. We talk Beamer ball to the moon, as we should, and the role that special teams plays. Guys, Furman, they're no slouch on that side either. They blocked 10 kicks a season ago. Now, South Carolina and Pete Limbo, they'll have a fantastic game plan, but you know how you let a team like Furman hang around and you let the upset happen that shouldn't happen? You lose the special teams facet. Nobody's expecting that. I'm just saying, though, Furman's going to make South Carolina earn it in the special teams facet. Again, they blocked 10 kicks last year. They are one of the best in college football at the special teams department. We believe in Pete Limbo, believe in Shane Beamer, but South Carolina better make sure they bring the lunch pail because Furman's going to be coming in the special teams department. Guys, I've already mentioned this a couple of times, but one of the things I'm most looking forward to is just what new personnel do we see on Saturday, right? Week 1 did not go the way we all hoped it would. And I'm not saying completely start from scratch and play all different guys, but there's some dudes that if we leave this football game and South Carolina fans don't see some of these different guys play, I think people are going to be pretty upset. Example, Nicholas Harbor. Now, granted, what's the health of him? What's his status? I think Shane Beamer will be well served, whether it be on his call-in show tonight or before the game or whatever, to give an update on Nick Harbor. Like, if he's not going to play, just tell people. Because if you don't do that and he doesn't play, people are going to be wondering, what's going on with this guy? Nicholas Harbor is one of them. Dontavius Braswell, Mario Anderson, Trovon Bowe, Big Tree Babalade. On the defensive side, Desmond Umeozulu, Grayson Pup Howard. Of course, Jelon Kilgore, who's going to play. But seeing them work in Lenoris Sellers could be another one in some special packages. Like seeing them get some guys in this football game. And ideally, you're in a position to where you're winning this game by such a margin that you can do that. You can be comfortable in doing that, right? You got to get to that point first. But I'm excited to see, is South Carolina able to empty the bench, whether it be because of blowout or because they're trying something different? Because this is the opportunity to get those young guys experience. Shane, we're talking about all preseason long. We're going to play freshmen at every single position. You know, you can expect to see those freshmen out there make an impact. Like, this is the game. You get their feet wet, allow them to make an impact, and get used to the speed of college football. Because, guys, even though it's Furman, there's nothing that simulates in practice, in scrimmage, being under the lights at Williams-Brice in a real ball game. And finally, guys, my final storyline is this. A chance to get right, quote unquote, heading into SEC play. You want to call it a cupcake game. You want to call it a get right game. Whatever you want to call it. This is the last tune-up before SEC play. And SEC play gets real, really, really fast with the Georgia Bulldogs between the hedges. And if you want any semblance of a chance, probably what you do against Furman is not going to help. But if you want any semblance of a chance, you need an impressive showing against Furman. Now, how do you define that? A 21-plus point margin of victory, 24 point, 31, 50, I don't know. But it needs to look like an SEC team playing an FCS team. And if South Carolina, if this football team can't show that they know they have the opportunity to, quote unquote, get right, you know, build confidence, build momentum, like that's what this game is for. You're not going to answer all your problems. There's no margin of victory that you can really win by, guys, that's going to cure anything. That scar tissue from that UNC game is deep. But there's even more emphasis on a game like this when you have the type of result you had in week one, right? Like if South Carolina would have beat UNC, it's like, okay, just beat Furman, whatever. No big deal. But after you surrender 9 sacks, 16 tackles for loss, you score 17 points, and you generate 0 sacks, 1 tackle for loss, and you get embarrassed on a national stage, it is imperative that you start fast, that you keep the foot on the pedal, and you make a statement on Saturday night. A chance to get right with SEC play looming. That's what South Carolina faces when Furman comes to town on Saturday night. Guys, let's jump into a quick break. On the other side, we'll talk key matchups between the Gamecocks and the Paladins heading into this ball game. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home. Call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Thursday, September the 7th, 2023. Hope you're all doing well as we keep the convo rolling. Do not forget our Q&A Power Hour upcoming in hour number 3. In hour number 2, we have our good friend, or I should say hour number 2. We're in hour number 2. At 1:15, we got our good friend Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate joining the show. I want to shout out my guy Brack, who I know is watching right now. He tweeted us a picture of his setup watching TDC. Guys, would love to see your setup. What does the setup look like for the Daily Crow? We'll retweet it. We'll reshare it, all that good stuff. Just make sure to tag us. But, I appreciate it, man. Brack80 at Gamecock Brack on Twitter. Always been a follower and a supporter and somebody I really appreciate since the beginning. So thank you so much, Brack, and all those that are tuned in, guys. TSUS wouldn't be what it is, what it's becoming without your love and support. That being said, let's keep the convo rolling because, like I mentioned, we have Marc Ryan in literally 10 minutes, and this next segment should carry to that. What are the key matchups that I'm most keeping an eye on in South Carolina's game against the Furman Paladins? And we will start Gamecocks linebacker Debo Williams against Furman running back Dominic Roberto. And guys, Dominic Roberto is a name you're going to get very familiar with. If you don't already know it, this is a guy that ran the football for 1,120 yards a season ago for the Paladins, 11 touchdowns. He averaged 5.7 yards per carry in their season opener against Tennessee Tech. He ran for just 59 yards, but ran for 2 touchdowns as well, and somebody they are going to lean on a lot in this football game. Roberto was a preseason all-conference selection. Get this, 2023 Walter Payton Award watch list, preseason all-conference first team for the SoCon. He's a co-captain on their football team. He was second-team all-conference last year. So this is a legit dude at the running back position. You look at what Debo Williams did last week for South Carolina. What I loved seeing was the physicality. He talked about it too in the preseason. Debo Williams did about, he's really taken it upon himself to be the smartest football player he can be and elevate his game to the next level. And I think Debo Williams, guys, a guy that, does he have as much top-end talent as a guy like Grayson Pup Howard? He may not, but many people have compared Debo Williams to Shaq Wilson in the sense that he's just really embraced his role. He's a lunch pail player, and he's going to bring it. But he's going to have his hands full with Dominic Roberto. And South Carolina has got to be able to stop the run in this football game. If you allow Furman to find any semblance of balance, Tyler Huff, their quarterback, is good enough to beat you. He can run the football as well. So you can almost kind of think of this as this is North Carolina's offense, but like a lower level down. Not as good, but a very similar style type of offense with a quarterback that can run and throw, a really solid running back. Again, Dominic Roberto, I don't care what the level is. He is a fantastic player, and he will bring it on Saturday. Debo Williams against Dominic Roberto. That is a matchup that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. My second key matchup in this football game. And guys, of course, we have to go to the trenches, right? There's no way we could talk about this game without saying one of the key matchups is trench warfare. South Carolina's offensive line, but specifically Nick Gargiulo against Furman's Matt Sachovka. And if you're not familiar with Matt Sachovka, 2023 preseason All-SoCon second team, another co-captain with the SoCon, an all-conference player last year. This is a dude at 6'4", 296 that fits the bill of a big-time defensive lineman. You look at his stats last year, had 28 total tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, and a sack in the 22 campaign. Nick Gargiulo is the leader of the offensive line. At this point, I think it's safe to say he is the best available and the best player you have on that offensive line. Now, whether you want to complain about that or you want to say that's it says something about that group, whatever. The fact of the matter is he's that leader. He's the leader up front for that group. Nick Gargiulo, Matt Sachovka, I think this is going to be a fantastic battle. I think a lot of folks, because they don't want to give credit to Furman, they don't realize how good Furman's D-line is. A veteran group, very experienced. They have 3 of 4 back from last year. And again, guys, we talked about 38 of 44 back from their 2 deep from a season ago. If South Carolina is going to turn things around on their offensive line, it starts with their leader. It starts with Nick Gargiulo. Not just getting the running game going, but protecting Spencer Rattler. If there's one position group that needs to bounce back more than any, it's the offensive line, and it starts with a Nick Gargiulo against Matt Sachovka in the trenches. And finally, guys, my final key matchup I'm most looking forward to in this ballgame. Gamecocks wide receiver Xavier Legette against Furman defensive back Travis Blackshear. And Blackshear, a guy, preseason all-conference, was an all-conference DB last season. And this was a Furman secondary that struggled, right? Finishing outside of the top 100 in passing defense. But Blackshear was very good for the Paladins a season ago, right? And you look at this year, already against Tennessee Tech, he had 1 interception in that game, a 44-yard interception return as well. Xavier Legette, what he did in week 1, I think we all had high hopes and expectations and aspirations for Xavier Legette in this season, right? But I don't think anybody saw that coming. What he did, 178 receiving yards against UNC, guys. That was more than he had all of last season. So now the question is, what does Xavier Legette do for an encore? And against especially a Furman Paladins team that was not good against the pass a season ago, is South Carolina able to find that explosive play? And if they are, I'd be willing to bet you that Xavier Legette is a big part of it. But Travis Blackshear, that matchup would be a lot of fun watching those two do battle on the outside. So again, guys, my 3 key matchups against the Furman Paladins. Debo Williams against Dominic Roberto. Nick Gargiulo against Matt Sachovka. And Xavier Leggett against Travis Blackshear. Guys, let's squeeze in another quick break on the other side. Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate. He will join the show to talk all things Gamecocks, SEC, college football, and everything in between. All that and more on the side of this break. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Thursday, September the 7th, 2023, as we await our good friend Marc Ryan to join the show. Really looking forward to chatting with him, all things Gamecocks, SEC, college ball. By the way, guys, you leave your questions. Leave your questions. Be sure to leave your comments because Marc Ryan had this to say on Twitter. He says, over under 6.5 four-letter words I get called in the chat. I'm all about making friends. So, Marc Ryan wants to see what you guys have in store for him. Anyways, in the meantime, leave your comments, your questions, 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-337. Marc Ryan. Yeah. 7, indeed. Okay, like I mentioned, guys, he joins us every single Thursday. And, of course, I jump on Offsides with Marc Ryan every Monday at 4:20 p.m. Eastern time. Always a really, really good time chatting. Excuse me, 4:40, my bad. 4:40. I'm getting my times mixed up. We did 5:20 this week. 4:40 normally, but because of the holiday week with Labor Day, all that good stuff, we changed things up. Either way, it's always a pleasure to chat with him. Our good friend, Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate. He joins the show once again. Marc, we're having some problems with your camera, my man. Can you hear me and see me? There he is.
Yes.
Okay, now I got you. Now I got you. What's going on, man? Great to chat with you once again.
Always, man. Always. Look, man, college football is here again, and we're ready to roll, man. Ready to rock and roll. This has been what a week. What a week, Chris. I feel like I've been a crisis counselor this week on the air. I'm no longer a talk show host, Chris. I am trying to talk people. Take one step back away from the ledge. Life will go on. Life will continue. It's all about perspective. And I don't know, man. People in this state don't seem to have a lot of it, you know?
Marc, I want to start there. Who do you think is having a harder time coping with their week 1 loss? Gamecock fans or Clemson fans?
Easily Clemson fans. Easily. Because even though, Chris, I warned them that I was hearing from folks who are real close to the Duke program that they were expecting to win, I can't tell you how many Clemson fans laughed at me for even sharing that. And I posted afterwards, who's laughing now? Clemson isn't good enough to be laughing at anybody. You know what I'm saying? Seriously, they're not good enough to be laughing at anybody, Chris. And somebody hit me today with, Chris, a line that I'm going to use on the show today. To this member anyway, Dabo reminds him of Blockbuster. Okay? All you need to do is just do a little thinking, right? And that line suddenly makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. Clemson's program feels a bit outdated right now. It feels a bit outdated in terms of the coordinators. It feels a bit outdated in terms of NIL. And it feels a bit way outdated in terms of the transfer portal. And let's just say, Chris, the natives are restless. And because Clemson fans are in a really awkward spot right now, Chris, you know the dynamic, man. No one wants to speak out against the guy who's made the program. You know, I remember leaving Death Valley last year after you guys stunned the world by beating Clemson. And a Clemson fan came up to me and said, Marc Ryan, Dabo's got to go. And I said, really, can I get your name? I'd like to give you credit for that on the show. And he said, no, thanks. What? They don't want to be known as dissenters. But Chris, if or when Florida State comes to town and puts it on Clemson with those new transfer portal guys playing a starring role, those murmurs are going to become an earthquake. All right?
Yeah, Marc, it's bad when, of course, after the game and Duke beats Clemson. And I actually had a take that, and this wasn't even a trolling take, Marc. This was just my honest opinion that Clemson's quote unquote dynasty is over. And nobody's to blame but Dabo himself for his lack of or unwillingness to use the portal and adapt to the times. And, you've seen other coaches, like even a Nick Saban and others, they have, evolved. And it seems like Dabo is not willing to do that. But, Mark, things are bad when you've got Clemson folks agreeing with us and echoing and saying, like, hey, I don't like this guy. He's a Gamecock, but he's spot on. So, there's trouble in paradise for sure when it comes to Dabo Swinney and his program. And you're hearing others echo that too. Yourself, Josh Pate, many in the college football world are saying it's adapt or die for Dabo Swinney at this.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, the question is, and we've tackled this on our show, Chris, and you saw Josh Pate address it the other day, is Dabo Swinney's choice. Is he going to retire as opposed to taking part in a college football system that he clearly despises? He clearly despises where college football is going. Chris, I agree with that. I agree with Dabo Swinney. And I don't think he's a bad guy and a bad coach for not getting with the current system. Mm-hmm. But if your job is to do whatever you can to win, right? Can we say that Dabo Swinney's doing that at Clemson right now? Mm-hmm. He's not. I mean, that's his job. So, the difference between Nick Saban and like Lane Kiffin and Dabo Swinney is all three of them hate the direction of college football. But Lane Kiffin and Nick Saban say, well, if I got to win, I guess I'm going to have to do this deal with the devil. And Chris, I get the feeling from knowing you for 4.5 years now, you and I would be exactly the same way. Mm-hmm. We would say, is this what we want college football to be? Which is what Nick Saban has said. And then we would do those things that we had to do to be successful, right? Mm-hmm. Dabo's not doing that, and you can see it on the field, and it's driving Clemson fans up a wall. So what is Dabo going to do? My prediction, Chris, is he will retire within 3 years if he does not get Clemson back to the college football playoff. Mm-hmm. All right? What I'm more fascinated to see is if he's actually going to get with the program and do the aforementioned deals with the devil that you've got to do to win in the transfer portal with NIL, et cetera.
Yeah, it's really going to be fascinating to see, Mark, to your point. And like you mentioned, when they take on Florida State in a couple of weeks, and there's going to be no hiding from the benefits or lack thereof for Clemson and then Florida State, looking the way they've built their program. We'll talk more about the Noles, Mark, later in the show, but let's get straight to Charlotte, North Carolina. Gamecocks get embarrassed on a national stage, 31-17. And it's more so about how the game happened. 9 sacks, 16 tackles for loss, -2 rushing yards. And on the other side, South Carolina's defensive front forcing a big goose egg, 0 sacks, and just 1 tackle for loss. Drake May sitting back there playing 7-on-7. You and I, Mark, and of course, we talked about this earlier in the week on Tuesday, but I want you to expand on your thoughts you had. But we talked about line of scrimmage a lot in the preseason, right? But could you have ever seen coming what took place against UNC? Because, Mark, ironically enough, one of the reasons I thought the Gamecocks would beat UNC is I didn't think UNC had the bodies in the line of scrimmage to expose their weaknesses and expose that deficiency. And boy, was I wrong. Your thoughts on South Carolina's blunder in Charlotte?
Chris, you, me, and Bruin Barbecue in the chat had more rushing yards than South Carolina. Okay? Me, you, and Bruin Barbecue. That's a factual statement. Do you realize that? You and me and Bruin Barbecue combined had more rushing yards. We had 0. They had -2. Okay? We beat them in rushing over the weekend. Chris, the North Carolina defensive line in the Athlon College Football Preview is ranked 9th out of 14 ACC defensive lines. Mm-hmm. Okay? You're not as bad as they are a year ago and flip the switch overnight and suddenly you're a dominating defensive line. That just doesn't happen. Chris, that was the most offensive line performance, the worst offensive line performance I have ever seen in all of my years watching college football. And there's no hyperbole here, man. Furman's offensive line would fare better against Alabama than South Carolina's did against North Carolina. I literally couldn't believe what I was seeing. If I could focus on one positive from a Gamecock perspective, Chris, Spencer Rattler played out of his mind. I was so damn proud of him 31 for 39 behind that. Brother, that offensive line was sponsored by Denny's. Always open. They were always open the entire game. So seriously, man, you got to tip your cap to Spencer Rattler for sticking with it, for going 31 for 39, for being the only reason. Chris, the score line was not embarrassing. 31-17 is not an embarrassing score line. 31-10 is, 38-10 is, right? 31-17 is not an embarrassing score line. That's an L. That's an L. South Carolina earned the L. But the only reason it wasn't biblical is because Rattler was that dude. I was so impressed with him.
Now, South Carolina is left picking up the pieces, Mark, and I think that it's one of those things where if you had, dare I call it, realistic expectations for the season, in the sense of, this could be a 7-win team, maybe 8, but the UNC game doesn't throw your season completely for a loop. But if you were one of those out there that thought 9 or 10 was, 8 was the floor somehow, I think you got a dose of reality. So the question now is, Mark, how does South Carolina pick up the pieces? Because like we talked about earlier in the week, right? You don't move the goalpost. This still needs to be a pop-off type of year for Shane Beamer. There's still opportunities to do that, but they've got to pick up the pieces and pick them up quickly because, as you know very well, being in the upstate, the Furman Paladins are coming, and they're not coming to just collect a paycheck. They're coming to win. Your thoughts on this matchup? And I mean, again, if you're looking at it as this cupcake Saturday, I think that's the wrong way to look at it, man. We saw Furman last year. Again, they lost by 23 to Clemson, but I mean, they outgained the Tigers in that football game. So I've talked a lot about Furman, Mark. What can you tell us? Obviously, again, you're in the upstate, you're familiar with the Paladins, and what are you expecting from this ball game on Saturday night?
Chris, Furman head coach Clay Hendricks is joining us on Offsides today at 6 o'clock. My very first question to him is going to be, and by the way, if you guys are in the upstate, 97.7 FM or 97.1 FM, if you're outside of the upstate, just download the Odyssey app, AUDACY. Look up the Fan Upstate, and you'll see us right there Offsides, 6 o'clock p.m. First question to him, Chris, is going to be, can you win this game? Okay, just point blank, all right? Chris, you know me, man. I don't do softballs, I'm going right at it. First question, can you win this game? Honestly, he's been so honest with us in the past. He was joking around with us last year about the Clemson game. Well, you know what, guys, we feel we can go up there and do some good things. It's a great opportunity for our kids to play in that kind of environment. That was the kind of scoop we were getting a year ago. And then, as you know, Furman outgained Clemson in the loss, right? They 384 to 376 outgained them. I get the sense the vibe is going to be a little bit different this year, Chris. Last year, Clemson was favored by 44.5. This year, South Carolina is favored by 24. Where I think I was wrong, Chris, all right, is that my thought when we were doing our game predictions is that if South Carolina lost to North Carolina, Furman was going to have a better chance to beat them. Okay, they got so up for that first game, and they'd kind of be sleepwalking in this one. Now I feel like Furman would have had a better shot if South Carolina had beaten North Carolina, right? They're high on themselves. They're high on the hog. You saw Beamer tweet out about the sellout today. They're getting an angry Gamecock team right now. Be very afraid if you see the Furman defensive line get pressure on Spencer Rattler. That should not happen. Okay, that absolutely should not happen. But then again, Chris, what do you have? Offensive lineman from Mercer, so it might.
Western Illinois, Yale, Charlotte to go along with he from Mercer as well. So I guess at least one of the positives is that a lot of your offensive line will face competition that they're more used to blocking against. But again, I look at Furman and man Dominic Roberto in the offensive side running the football, their quarterback Tyler Huff, a really good player, and that defensive line solid as well.
Let me tell you about Tyler Huff. Was recruited and offered by Troy at the FBS level. Okay, completed 68% of his passes a season ago, and holds many Furman Paladins records. He is the principal reason when you talk to Clay Hendricks, Chris, and our station carries Furman football and basketball games. You see the twinkle in his eye when he talks about it. He's got a 6'1", 216-pound quarterback who was offered by FBS schools at Furman. and they're the number 6 FCS team in the country, right? So I don't know, Chris, where would the national champion FCS school be among FBS schools? Where would they be? I'd say probably around top 50, number 50, right? So where is number 6? Top 60? Top 70? If South Carolina doesn't play like a top 60 or top 70 team, they're going to wear the L on Saturday night. When we made our picks, Chris, I said 38-26 South Carolina. I will stick with that. That is having the proposed spread, which is listed at 24 points. So I'm going to say Gamecocks by 12.
So this does serve, Mark, as the final tune-up before SEC play for South Carolina, and there's nowhere to hide, Mark. You got to go between the hedges and take on the Georgia Bulldogs, and rightfully so. Not many people are probably going to give you a chance in that one. Then Mississippi State follows, which I think will be the real swing game of you've got to win that game to keep your goals intact. But I mean, what do you need to see? Let's just assume Gamecocks get the W, but what do you need to see most importantly from South Carolina to feel like they're going in the right direction heading into conference play? Because, I mean, as well as I do, Mark, if some of those deficiencies you had against UNC, if those are showing their ugly head against Furman, if you can't block Furman, if you can't penetrate and get pressure on Furman, I mean, what chance do you have, Mark Ryan, with all due respect to the Paladins?
Yeah, the thing is, Chris, I think the game plan for South Carolina against Furman is very easy. If you throw slip screens to Xavier Legette all game long, I don't see Furman tackling him one-on-one for less than 8 yards a pop, right? So you spread Furman out wide with all those slip screens, and then when the defense is spread out, you hit him right up the middle. And I think Furman's going to have a real hard time. I mean, what Furman cornerback do you value one-on-one against the physical specimen that is Xavier Legette, Chris? South Carolina has the perfect tonic here with an offensive line that can't play, frankly, at this point. And that is to just play horizontally, right? Forget the timing vertical routes down the field. Just play horizontally and make Furman tackle your physical specimens on the perimeter in space. Then run up the middle once there's some Swiss cheese in the middle, right? That's all they have to do. But Chris, I've got to ask you this. Can you paint the picture for me of fire and brimstone if the Gamecocks were to lose this game, knowing that Georgia is up next? What would it be like? What would it be like Sunday morning, Chris, if the Gamecocks fall to Furman?
Well, I'll say this first, Mark, because my mind immediately went to taking a leave of absence from Twitter. But I am more of a man than Shadow of Death Valley will ever be. So I will not need a 24 or 48 hour grace period from social media to cope with a loss. It's hard to compare it to any previous games, but it'd probably be up there with 2019 App State. I think it would take something of that magnitude to bring the Shane Beamer tenure into question. I really do. I mean, it just at that point, Mark, like if you lose to Furman, your season's a wash at already 2 games in. I don't even want to think about it. You know what I mean? But and I don't think it's going to happen, by the way. Spoiler, my prediction drops tomorrow. I'm not going to be the guy that picks Furman to beat South Carolina, but yeah, I mean, the Gamecocks need to bounce back. They desperately need to. I think, one of the things I talked about today, Mark, was Spencer Rattler, building off that week 1 performance and protecting the football and building confidence. Because here's the thing, South Carolina has deficiencies, but if you go into SEC play with a confident Spencer Rattler and he's playing well, I mean, that gives you a chance in a lot of football games. But I look at this game, Mark, similar to how I viewed Charlotte last year, which followed the Georgia State, Arkansas, and then Georgia games. And it's unfortunate because in a game like Furman, you can't beat Furman by enough to appease the appetite of the fan base and remove the scar tissue that is what happened in week 1.
But win comfortably, Chris.
But if it's a close game and you lose, you have everything to lose, right? So it's like, I don't know what the margin of victory is that will have people saying, okay, we now have a a great shot to beat Georgia. I think it's more like the way it looks, the offensive line taking major strides, the defensive front getting pressure. Like, it needs to look like, Mark Ryan, an SEC team against an FCS team. That's what it needs to look like. Will we get that? I don't know.
Chris, again, remember, I picked South Carolina 38, Furman 26. South Carolina fans might say, Mark, that's a bit disrespectful. But then, Chris, when we made our picks, I picked Georgia 31, South Carolina 20. I think both of the next two games are going to be more competitive than people realize, both in the positive and the negative for South Carolina. I think South Carolina goes 1-1 in these two games with a win over Furman and a loss against Georgia. But I think the way we get there ends up being a little bit surprising to some folks. I do still think there's some growing pains with Carson Beck in Georgia. And Chris, look, if you're going to get Georgia, you want them now, right? Like you want them before Carson Beck has a chance to get going. By the way, Chris, I've got some good news in my hand right here for Gamecock fans. Can I share a little bit of research with you?
Please do.
Okay? All right.
Please do.
We can debate till we're blue in the face, Chris, about the expanded playoff and whether it's good for college football, et cetera. If Clemson had a safety net in the Duke game, is that good for college football or bad for college football? I don't like safety nets, Chris. I like the fact that the loser of Ohio State, Michigan is likely knocked out of the college football playoff. That's what puts college football at the fever pitch, right? However, where the expanded college football playoff really helps college football is with teams like the one that you cover and are passionate about, Chris, the South Carolina Gamecocks. Now, I have in front of me here the teams that would have made, Chris, the college football playoff last year if there were a 12-team playoff, right? I looked at their 4 recruiting classes leading up to that college football playoff. I allowed them to drop their lowest score because I was kind of an easy teacher, Chris. I allowed them to drop their lowest recruiting class, especially because a lot of these schools had coaching changes. And, you don't count Beamer's 80th ranked recruiting class against them. And here's what I found, Chris. All right. TCU's top 3 recruiting classes in the 4 years that led to them making the playoff, number 33. Okay. Tennessee's number 14. Utah's number 32, Kansas State number 57, USC number 28, Penn State number 11, and Washington number 20. Now, what do all those numbers mean? You know what it takes to make the CFP right now, Chris? You got to have a 4-year rolling average recruiting class of class rank number 10. You got to have a top 10 average class to make the CFP. You can't have an individual class in those 4 years lower than number 20. Now, do I think in the SEC you're going to be able to make the college football playoff? You're going to have a record good enough, 10-2, 9-3, to make the college football playoff with a recruiting class of number 32 or number 46? No, I don't. But what this does tell me, Chris, if you looked at where the top 12 fell last year, Tennessee had the 3-year average of 14th. Okay, so I do think what you can say conclusively is that the Gamecocks can make a future expanded college football playoff with a 4-year recruiting average around class rank number 15. And suddenly, Chris, brother, the future's so bright you need shades. I mean, think about that. That is doable for the Gamecocks, is it not? So now the college football playoff has gone from the Masters, an elitist fraternity that you're not welcome in, right, to maybe you've got a shot. Maybe you've got a shot. Dude, to me, that's the best news ever if I'm a Gamecock fan.
And you make great points, Mark. And I think South Carolina certainly is one of those teams that as we move into the expanded playoff, I think they're one of those middle-of-the-pack SEC teams that can challenge. And I think that becomes even more realistic than challenging for an SEC championship. Just call it for what it is, because the additions of Oklahoma, Texas, all of a sudden, though, if you can get to that magic number of 10 wins, I think you put yourself in position to be a college football playoff team. Let's move to the rest of the SEC slate, Mark. Are you ready to admit that you were wrong about Florida State?
Dude, I've never – listen, let me tell you, Chris.
They look like a machine, Mark. They look like a machine.
Bro, listen, here's the lesson that I've learned about this, Chris. Okay. It's not, you don't harm yourself by being wrong, Chris. In the end, you and I are in the entertainment business, brother. Our job is to be compelling. Our job is to make educated picks and predictions. So let me tell you why I was so wrong about Florida State. Because, Chris, it is freaking impossible to project and predict in the transfer portal era. It's just impossible. Like, how the hell do I know what they're going to do? What bothered me, Chris, what really pissed me off about Florida State was, to channel the late, great Dennis Green, you want to crown them, then crown their ass. They hadn't done anything. They hadn't done anything, Chris. Florida State was above average last year. That's it. They were 5-3 in the All Cupcakes Conference, and that's it, right? And so that's what I saw. I saw them barely beat mediocre Florida. I saw them barely beat mediocre Oklahoma, and you want to crown their ass. I had no way of knowing, Chris, how those portal guys were going to be utilized. Cam Coleman, right? Jaheim Bell. I obviously was really familiar with Jaheim Bell, but how Norvell was going to be able to utilize those guys. They essentially, Chris, added 4- and 5-star players at every single position of need. They got a defensive tackle from Western Michigan that is clogging the middle of that defensive line better than I've seen anybody for them in the last 10 years. So I've never been more wrong, Chris. Can I please, boop, 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 can I please back up that take that South Carolina would beat Florida State on a neutral field? Can I please back that up? Because, brother, that was awful. That was awful. Florida State has scored 35 points or more in 7 straight games. That leads the nation, Chris. And their blue chip ratio, here's what's fascinating to me about the Seminoles. Their blue chip ratio, Chris, is 38%. As you know, no one has ever won the national championship in the modern era, the last 20 plus years, without a blue chip ratio of over 50%, which means more than half of the players on your roster were 4- or 5-star recruits coming out of high school. And it's what is transfixing me is wondering to myself, can they be the first to do it with all those free agent superstars that they signed? Chris, I'm with Dabo Swinney. I hate it. College football is not supposed to be free agency. But Norvell said, you know what? Here's where we're spending our NIL money. Okay? We would all perish at the sight of what they paid those guys, Chris. Okay? But can you not say that was money well spent? Dear God, that was something to witness, man.
So, Mark, when you mention that 38% blue chip ratio, help me understand this. Does that take into account the star ratings of the transfer portal players they brought in, or does it exclude them?
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Josh Pate addressed that yesterday on my show. I mentioned the 38%. He said, Mark, they're still under their threshold with the transfer portal guys. With the transfer portal guys, they're at 42%. Okay? The difference is, Chris, is this. Much like quarterbacks in the NFL draft, first-round quarterbacks have about a 1 in 3 hit rate, okay, if they're drafted in the first round. 4- and 5-star players have about a 40 to 50% hit rate, Chris. So not only are they getting the 4 and 5 stars, but they're getting 4 and 5 stars that they already know are stars, right? Like their former schools already filtered them through that process. And then they entered the transfer portal to go to the highest bidder. And what do you know? Florida State is right there with the biggest bag of cash.
And I would say this, though, Mark, to your point, I understand the not liking the direction of college football or liking college football less because of the portal, but I don't know, man. I don't know if you saw my take earlier this week, but I looked at what Colorado did against TCU, and Deion was looked at as he's off his rocker. He's telling guys to get out of his program. He's got 80 new players. But Mark, I look at it more as it worked. And if it's going to be based off NIL and contracts and money, I don't blame Deion for treating it like a professional roster. And then you look at Florida State, and I look at Shane Beamer, and I'm like, to every coach, you got to be almost cutthroat in the transfer portal world. The days are over of us coddling, saying that oh, well, it's, they're just kids. No. They're now on payrolls. That's the reality. I think I even heard it from the North Carolina side where they said, Chris, 5-6 defensive backs hit the portal. Why was that? Well, they were urged to leave because they weren't very good. Like, that's where we are now. But it worked. Deion showed it's one game, but it worked. It did not. I mean, Florida State overnight is a top 5 team. I mean, it just, you know what I mean? Like, that's why coaches aren't getting grace periods of 6, 7, 8 years to build programs, because it can literally happen overnight if you've got a large bag of cash and you go out in the portal and you get guys.
Chris, my first question to Josh Pate yesterday was, has Coach Prime decapitated the role of patience for new coaches? Has he, and Josh said, yeah. And I had FBS coaches texting me about that Coach Prime is screwing the time that they all have by what he's been able to do. Chris, what you just mentioned falls under the line of don't blame the player, blame the game. I hate it, Chris. I also can't blame Coach Prime for doing it. And what makes that situation so unique, Chris, is it's like what's happening in America. There is no middle class in America anymore, right? There's no middle class in third world countries. The middle class is getting squeezed in America. The Colorado roster, Chris, has no middle class. The Colorado roster is, 24 and 5-star guys and 40 me and yous. Okay? Seriously. Dude, seriously. Look at that roster. And so what Coach Prime is smart enough to do is he's like, okay, my son is one of them. My running back is another one. And Travis Hunter is another one. These are the only guys that are ever going to touch the ball, Chris. My running back, my quarterback, and Travis Hunter. And those are the only guys that are going to touch the ball. And he's smart enough to realize that, Chris. His roster has no middle class. The sport of college football, Chris, has never seen a roster like Colorado's, right? It's 4 and 5 stars and Marc Ryan and Chris Phillips. That's the Colorado Buffaloes roster.
Mark, before we get you out of here, let's look at week 2 of the college football season. Your Florida Gators, by the way, they've got a game similar to what South Carolina has.
Next subject, please. Nothing to see here.
Mark, I'd say this, Mark. I think right now, and I know you've gone on record, I've gone on record. I left week 1 saying that game with Florida and South Carolina is going to be the best pillow fight in the SEC. If things stay, I mean, I'm telling, they look like similar teams to me. I know they played Utah, but I mean, 2 teams whose offensive lines were abysmal, 2 quarterbacks who racked up passing yards. I'm not saying the Gamecocks shouldn't beat Florida, but that game to me, I don't look at that as an automatic dub anymore. I got to be totally honest with you. Anyways, Gators.
Chris.
Go ahead.
Okay. How is Florida going to score the 28 to 30 points required to win that game?
Well, they've got to get Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne going. I know you agree with that.
Unless Florida is able to make Spencer rattled, okay, for the second time in 2 years. Chris, again, just look at the quarterback matchup, man. That's all you have to do. What's sad for you and I, Chris, me as a Florida grad, you as a big Gamecock, is that game, Chris, is going to be the difference for one of us between a bad season and stick your head in the sand humiliating. See what I'm saying? Like that is in our radar right now.
Yeah.
The Missouri game, I don't think either one of us likes our chances against Kentucky right now, do you? Remember, I picked Kentucky over the Gamecocks in the offseason. But those like Vanderbilt, Missouri, Florida, South Carolina, those games have now become the 50-50 toss-ups that at least allow you to save face in the offseason,
And the pressure on each of the respective coaches will be extreme, the loser of that game. Of course, Billy Napier for obvious reasons, and then Shane Beamer. I mean, that could be a 2-4 or 1-5 start if you lose that game. Either way, though, the week 2 slate, Gators take on McNeese. Same time Gamecocks play Furman. So they'll look to bounce back. But you look at this slate, Mark, a really good one. It starts at 11 a.m., with Vandy and Wake on Saturday. You've got at 3:30 Miami and Texas A&M. You've got Ole Miss Tulane, which I think has the potential to be one of the most fun games of the week. And then, of course, the headliner is Alabama and Texas at 7 o'clock. And then Auburn and Cal on the West Coast closing it out late. So just some of the top things you're looking forward to. And, by the way, we get to find out if Colorado can follow it up against Nebraska and Marcus Satterfield. What are you most looking forward to in week 2? What's got you excited about this slate?
I can't imagine who you'll be rooting for, Chris, in that Colorado-Nebraska game.
Hey, I took Minnesota -7 against Nebraska purely out of principle. I lost the bet, but I didn't even care.
Chris, I'll tell you what. You're going to be much more likely to be wearing the black than the garnet in that Colorado-Nebraska matchup when we see it on TV.
Indeed.
All right. I'm taking Miami over Texas A&M as my upset pick of the week.
Wow.
All right. That is my upset pick of the week.
Okay.
I like Colorado to beat Nebraska at home because stupid is as stupid does, and that's how Nebraska plays. 2-14 in their last 16 one-score games. Ole Miss puts Tulane in a body bag. Okay, just cut it out with this cute little story, man. Just wait till you see what Lane has for those boys. You know, all talk of Tulane joining the Power Five because they're in New Orleans is going to come to an end after that, and Sarkisian will be calling Nick Saban daddy after the Alabama game as well. Chris, let me tell you something. You guys want to make some money, all right? The biggest discrepancy I've seen all week between the betting line and what the models are saying is Alabama hosting Texas. Chris, the line is 7 points. Based on what? Again, this is like pre-Florida State hype that I didn't like, only Texas didn't raid the transfer portal the way that Florida State did. So you mean to tell me that Texas is ready to go to Alabama and play Alabama within a score based on what that you've seen up until this point? You know,
I think some would argue
to
based off of they should have beat them last year with Bama having Bryce Young and Will Anderson. That's what some people would say. Some people would say that.
Chris, I would take Alabama -7 at Texas. Okay.
Okay.
I would take them at Texas by that mark. In Bryant-Denny. Here's what you're going to be saying midway through the second quarter. Man, I had high hopes for this game. All right, let's look ahead to next week. You know what I'm saying? That's what you're going to be saying midway through the second quarter. Okay.
Oh, goodness. Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate. Mark, one last thing, and I'll get you out of here real quickly, putting you on the spot a little bit. NFL begins tonight. Do you have a Super Bowl favorite or a pick in your mind who you're looking for?
Listen, brother, there's a lot of NFL teams, Chris, under a ton of pressure. You know, I think the Jets are going to be a disaster. You know, their over/under win total is like 9.5 wins, Chris. So seriously, the Jets, they're going to win 10 games. All right. You look at the schedule, Chris, they could start 1-5, 0-6, the Jets. I think, you know, there's 3 powerhouse teams in the AFC, and Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence is going to be really good as well. But you consider, Chris, that for the Buffalo Bills, the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Kansas City Chiefs, anything but the Super Bowl is a failure. One of those teams isn't even going to make the conference championship game. All right. I'm going to go Bengals to win the Super Bowl this year. I absolutely love Joe Burrow. You know, the NFL nerd types, Chris, will tell you that quarterback wins is not a stat. Really? Well, what were the Cincinnati Bengals before Joe Burrow got there? You can't measure quarterbacks by wins. What about Cincinnati with Joe Burrow? What compare the before and after to Joe Burrow and tell me that you can't measure quarterbacks by wins, right? This is why I don't understand all the love for like Justin Herbert. You know, Chris, they gave him 5 years, $260 million for the second largest choke in playoff history. Don't you want to at least see if the guy has the coconuts to win when it matters most? You know, so, you know, show me something, man. I think this is the Cincinnati Bengals year. I look for a Bengals-Eagles Super Bowl. And, man, I hope and pray that the Carolina Panthers got it right, drafting 5'10" Bryce Young in the first round. I was listening to Keyshawn Johnson say last week about Kyler Murray. There's never been a quarterback that height long-term that has had great success. I then went and looked up Bryce Young's height, the exact same as Kyler Murray's. The exact same. So I have concerns, to say the least, about what's going on, man. What's yours, by the way?
I will go, you know, I think that Bengals is a good pick. I feel like Chiefs. You know what? I think the Buffalo Bills finally break the hex, man. Maybe I'm picking that out if I want that to happen. I lived in Charlotte for 4 years, and so I don't pretend like I'm a Panthers fan. I lived there when Cam Newton and the guys were balling out, and so I kind of jumped on as a bandwagon. I more so just like to watch. But I knew so many guys in Charlotte from Ithaca, Rochester, Syracuse, all the upstate, Buffalo itself. I want to see the Bills, man. It's the Bills and the Gamecocks. There's some parallels there of tormented fan bases. I'd love to see. I think they've got the quarterback, Josh Allen. They've got the weapons. I think it's only a matter of time. So I'll go with the Buffalo Bills. I think it is a team from the AFC, though.
blue collar Buffalo Bills,
Yes.
blue collar South Carolina Gamecocks. Can success come to both? We will soon
Indeed.
see.
Well,
Always
Mark
enjoy-
Ryan, you know that football is back truly when you've got college and NFL on the docket all weekend long. Mark Ryan of the Fan Upstate does a fantastic job. Mark, appreciate you taking the time, my friend. Looking forward to doing it again next week.
Guys, thank you so much. Appreciate you guys. Invite you to give me a follow at Marc Ryan on air. That's at MARC Ryan on air. Truly do appreciate that. Chris, always a pleasure, my friend. We will talk to you Monday.
Mark, you're the man. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. Great stuff. Great stuff from Mark Ryan of the Fan Upstate. That was an electric conversation, guys. We jump into a quick break. On the other side, we're diving into your questions, your comments, your calls as well in our Q&A Power Hour. You're tuned in to The Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose, while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Thursday, September the 7th. We have entered our Q&A Power Hour. Phone lines are officially open. Taking your questions, comments, calls, 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. Someone texted in earlier, said, we better not see freaking Luke Doty at wide receiver over any of our freshmen. Are those feelings echoed? Dre Picasso texted in and had this to say earlier today. Honest thoughts for this Saturday. I really hope the O-line can get things together to better protect Spencer so he can make plays, as well as give the running backs room to make plays as well. I really hope that we can bounce back in a huge way after the loss of the Tar Heels. I have faith in Beamer, and I really hope Loggins can continue to call good plays, keep the defense on the heels, while showing they can indeed call the best plays possible. Throw the ball downfield. Not going to give up on Beamer yet, just because I know there's a lot of potential, a lot of talent. Go Cox. Well said, Dre. Let's jump to the phone lines here.
Call from Robbie Davis, Zaxby's Hall of Famer.
Robbie Davis, what's up, my friend? How are you?
I'm doing pretty good on this Thursday. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, my man. I appreciate you asking. What's going on?
I have got my prediction ready, but I'm going to say this first real quick.
Okay.
I think that this coaching staff for South Carolina has busted their balls this week getting the guys ready for Saturday. And I think we will see I'm convinced that we will see a different, a much different offense and defense than we've seen last week. I think these guys will be raring to go because nobody feels more embarrassed than they do. So they're going to I think they're going to go out there Saturday night and bully Furman around because they're coming into our house and I don't think they're going to allow Furman to push them around at all.
You would certainly like to think so, Robbie. You would certainly like to think so because if you can't push around the Furman Paladins, that is not a good sign going into SEC play. Not a good sign at all.
No. And we have to travel to Athens next week. But we'll focus on next week when next week gets here.
Indeed. So what's your prediction, Robbie? What you got?
My prediction is 38-6.
38-6. I'm assuming Gamecocks.
Absolutely.
All right.
38-6. And the only way Furman scores is 2 field goals.
Okay. 38-6. All right. I would take that. I think all of Gamecock Nation would probably take that. I'd take a 32-point win, no doubt.
Because these guys have had a sour taste in their mouth all week long about the way they played last week. And I feel like they're going to want to prove that they can play much better than that.
Mm-hmm.
But also, if I was in charge of recruiting, okay, I would instead of getting guys, and no offense to these guys, okay, but if I was getting guys, offensive line guys and defensive line guys, I'm not getting guys from Charlotte or what have you, okay? I'm going to bust my butt and try to recruit guys that have Power 5 experience, Okay? But who we got is who we got. And hopefully these guys, with how bad they played last week, the light bulb has come on and they are ready to kick Furman's ass on Saturday night. Because if I was these guys, I'm not letting somebody come into my house and push me around. It ain't happening.
Robbie, all the
Hell,
offensive line's got to do is just block, you know? I mean,
yeah. I don't know what number 77 was doing in the North Carolina game, but a friend of mine, me and him were talking a couple of days ago, and he was like, dude, our offensive line sucks so bad, you and me could get past them. And I was like, you're probably right, but those guys are a lot bigger than you and me both combined. So, but I really think that this is going to be a win for South Carolina, a much needed win after the bad performance last week. And I think Beamer Ball is going to show itself this coming Saturday night. I think Limbo's got some stuff cooked up and ready to go.
Indeed. Robbie, it should be a good time, man. Should be a great game. And obviously, I know you're going to be there in person. You and Marion R26, be safe. And, should be a packed house at Willie B. They announced this morning it was a sellout. And I'm sure folks are itching to get back in Williams-Brice, and one of the 7 opportunities that we'll get to do so.
For sure. And I'll make sure to do some extra cheering since you ain't going to be there in person.
I appreciate that, Robbie, greatly. I appreciate that. Y'all have fun, man. I appreciate you. I'm sure we'll talk to you tomorrow.
For sure. All right, man. Have a good one, okay?
Yeah, man. You take care, Robbie. Great stuff from Robbie Davis, 843-790-3377. I want to continue to take your questions, comments, calls. Let's get into the YouTube chat here. You guys have been active for sure. Jacob E says, only thing I can think of would have been to just sub out the tackle spots. Hughes and Fugar got absolutely exposed and dominated. Would have liked to have seen Big Tree in there. I mean, you're going to have to try some different bodies is what I would think. I think you just have to. You know what I mean? I think you just have to. Let's see. Going back through your questions. Parrish Jordan says, where is Alex McGrath? Parrish, we'll probably get Alex on the show here and there throughout the season, but he is no longer a weekly guest. It was a tough decision we had to make, but one that, we had to make for the business, for there's only limited space when it comes to guests. And so that's where we are. So love Alex. Alex and I have a great relationship, and he totally understood when we had the conversation. Brantley says, do you think Nick Harbor hauls any catches in this weekend? Also, starting at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, I'll be listening to Rooster in my Rari by Waka Flocka on repeat at volume 72 for good luck. Bust the speakers in my car. I hope I don't pass out from the noise like I did last Friday. Go Cox. Cox by 90, he says. Does Nick Harbor haul in a catch? I don't think it's a given, but I'll say yes. I think he finally gets a catch. Yes. Ethan K. Furman always has sneaky good quarterbacks, DBs, and pass rushers. Better be ready to pressure them. Yeah, Tyler Huff's a good player. Tyler Huff is a really, really good player. Lynn Turner, I'm not saying we'll lose to Furman this weekend, but they've beaten us before. What was it, 1982 that happened? Jeff Gullidge says the O-line's going to make huge jumps this week because, as they said, they were embarrassed by their performance. So that fixes everything. Yeah, fixes everything. Jacob E. says, simply put, the step down in competition will allow the O-line to be better this week. However, there's a reason we went after those freshmen on the O-line. Put in the freshmen and let's see what they can do. I would agree with you, Jacob E. I would agree with you 110%. Bubba Wethead says Rattler is there. He looked great last week with zero protection. Still threw for 350 yards. Lynn Turner echoes that and says Rattler was great. He wiggled out of so many sacks on Saturday. They could have had twice as many sacks, and he threw no picks. And if AB doesn't drop a couple passes, that game looks different. I thought it was interesting what JC said about this team's got to be more clutch too. You know, that drop pass by Amari and Brown, some other big plays and chances you had in the red zone. I thought that was a very interesting point he made. Luke RJ, I'm just glad the game is a night game. Gamecocks under the lights are always good. Coach Ford says, Chris, how stupid does a top-tier running back have to be to sign with us and this O-line historically as well? Coach Ford has never one to mince words, that's for sure. Chris Taylor says, Juju isn't a freaking running back. Way too little to even come close to being a running back. Let's see. Luke RJ says, Coach Ford needs to find some joy. M. Colt says, the Gamecocks could beat Furman by 70 points this Saturday, and it wouldn't change my mind about this team right now. The only way this Furman game is going to matter to me is if the Gamecocks lose. I mean, that's, you know, M. Colt, that's the unfortunate part of a game like this is that, you know, for the SEC team, it's if you win by a lot, you were supposed to, and if you don't win by a lot, what the hell are you doing? And if you lose, it is literally DEFCON, what is it? I think 1 is the worst, right? Whatever. It's panic button time if you lose. So Jeff Gullidge, nothing good will come out of this weekend's game. If we blow them out, all we're going to talk about was where was that week 1. And then we are going to get our asses kicked by Georgia and relive this week. I'm glad we're all in a chipper mood today. Coach Ford says beating Furman, Jacksonville State, and Vandy mean crap. Let's talk Mississippi State, Tennessee, Mizzou, Kentucky, and A&M. I mean, Coach Ford, I'm not totally discrediting what you're saying. This season was never about beating Furman, that's for sure. Luke RJ says, this game would serve a lot of purpose for me as a player. I bet these players want to ball out and get those stats up and have fun playing football. Indeed, Luke RJ, you're right. Bruin Nation, it builds confidence and they can work out things they struggle at instead of tackling and blocking each other. For sure. Let's see. Bruin Nation and Coach Ford having a field day in the comments today. Let's see. Austin Hicks says, that's the issue. We shouldn't lack depth so much that Luke Doty is the best option. That's a player development issue. I mean, Austin, I'll say this. It is concerning. I like Luke Doty. I think he's an athlete. I'm glad he's playing wide receiver. But, like, it's not even the fact that Luke Doty's playing wide receiver or getting catches. But the fact that, like, Luke Doty and Peyton Mangrum are hauling in catches before guys like Nick Harbor, like Landon Sampson, like Kyler Horton, like Elijah Caldwell, like that to me is I don't know what to make of that. You know what I mean? I just don't really know what to make of that. Like other football teams, for the most part, are not doing that. So I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what to make of it. So looks like the Gamecocks conference schedule is out for men's basketball. South Carolina will open conference play January the 6th against Mississippi State at home. Number 2, the second conference game at Alabama. So it's going to be I'm not ready to talk basketball yet. I'm just not, dude. I don't know what to think about year 2 of Lamont Paris. I mean, you know, as we evolve content wise, like I think you guys would rather me just not even talk basketball. Like just let's just pretend basketball. Let's just talk football through December. Let's talk recruiting and more football in January, and then let's get to baseball season because basketball is an afterthought at South Carolina. Let's just call it for what it is, right? let's not sugarcoat it. Men's basketball at South Carolina, it's an afterthought. It just is. Let's see. John Rice says, is there a better chance we lose to Furman or beat Georgia? Now, John, you've got to wait. John Rice has a knack for asking the questions, the thought-provoking questions that really get the gears turning. Better chance to lose to Furman or beat Georgia? Folks may not want to be honest with themselves, but after week 1, John, there's a better chance South Carolina loses to Furman than beats Georgia. There really is. You're probably looking, John, at a spread in Athens. I would almost bet you right now that spread's going to be 27.5. Truly. Maybe 26.5. Maybe it is. But there's a better chance the Gamecocks lose to Furman than beat Georgia. Right now. I absolutely. Let's see. Jeff Gullidge, it's funny that people don't want Doty as a quarterback, and now they don't want him as a wide receiver. Damn, the guy can't catch a break. No, I mean, Jeff, again, it's not that I don't want him at wide receiver. It's that I'm surprised a guy like Luke Doty, who's been playing quarterback, is able to just step in the wide receiver room and pass up guys that were recruited to play wide receiver. Coach Ford says something I think most of us can agree with. Basketball is a 3-month root canal. That's the one thing I'll say, guys, is like I am excited to talk, to broaden all of our content and talk more SEC, because maybe, just maybe then I will be excited to watch some good basketball, because just keeping up with South Carolina when it comes to basketball, not a lot of fun. Not a lot of fun. USC Edit says, y'all are tripping. Something good can definitely come from beating Furman bad. He also says, you say that now, how much worse we're going to feel in a couple of days if we don't beat them bad. Brennan M says, Chase, weren't you asking about basketball season on Saturday? Ruben Nation says, basketball is winning 18 games and making the NIT. Book it. From your lips to God's ears, my friend. Madison Duncan, is there any chance the Gamecocks lost to UNC to hide skill leading up to the Georgia game? I know, crazy idea. Madison Duncan, that is a spin zone of all spin zones. And you know what, Madison? If that is the case, fire this entire coaching staff, because that's stupid. Justin, no disrespect to Luke, but Harbor is a better wide receiver target. Bigger target. They keep doing stuff like this. It's going to make getting the Jimmies and Joes harder. Jeff Gullidge, I don't give a crap who catches the ball. If they're open, throw them the ball. I could care less if it was the water boy. I hear you. Throw it to Robbie Davis if he's open. Got a text here. Rattler's our best weapon. Imagine if we didn't have him this season. Hope he throws all over the field on Saturday. I bet my bottom dollar he could throw a pigskin over them there mountains. Go Cox. Indeed. Indeed. Back to the TDC questions channel we go. Greg Bedinger says, for sure, better chance that we lose to Furman than beat Georgia. Yeah. Dalton's riding with Nebraska this weekend, by the way, over Colorado. He says Nebraska is going to cover for sure. There is nobody who hates Deion and Colorado more than Dalton and Brendan M in the Discord. They hate him. I don't know why. They hate Colorado. And Dalton loves Marcus Satterfield and loves Nebraska. It is a wild, wild time. Y'all be sure to join the Patreon, join the Big Cock Club, the Discord today. Austin Hicks says, where did you get that hat? A buddy of mine in Columbia, B2ATL on Instagram. He had this vintage find by yours truly. Good stuff. This is a dope hat, too. I appreciate you recognizing that. Mabry Nar 26. Harbor is working through an injury. He is indeed. So who knows? Shane Beamer has his call-in show tonight, guys, 6 o'clock. I'm sure we'll hear more I'm sure we will hear more on injuries, what have you. Wow, how about this? Florida Gators defensive back Jadarius Perkins to enter the transfer portal after 1 week. Interesting. Jacob E. says, under no circumstances is that Nebraska team covering against Colorado. Y'all tell Dalton that. He seems convinced. I have no idea. Brewer Nation says Nebraska might score 13 points. USC edits, as much as O-line hurt us, Rattler directly hurt us. 2 third-down plays we failed to convert. I obviously don't expect Rattler to be perfect, but those were 2 situations that could have changed the game. Yeah, those things are maximized when it's all on your quarterback. Excuse me. Brewer Nation, I need Dale to call into the Beamer call-in show. That would be hysterical. That would be hysterical. Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break on the other side. We'll keep the conversation rolling, taking your questions, comments, calls, and more here on this Thursday. You're tuned in to The Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle Dougie Ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Thursday, September the 7th, 2023. We're taking your questions, comments, calls, 843-790-3377. We sit just 2 days away from game day. Gamecocks and Furman will do battle in the home opener at Williams-Brice Stadium. Let's hear some of your score predictions if you got them today, tomorrow, what have you. Also, will you be in attendance? Should be a lot of fun, guys. Do not forget the post-game call-in show right here will air within 10 minutes of the end of South Carolina's game against Furman. So be sure to check us out right here on YouTube, and I'll post the links across social media. Going to be a lot of fun. Of course, week one was incredible. It was incredible, and expecting nothing less for this week two matchup and beyond. We'll do that after every single South Carolina football game. Kens asked the question, how long have you been doing this full time? Great question, Kens. August of 2019, I moved to Columbia to pursue TSUS full time, and I've been doing it full time ever since. Truly has been a blessing for sure. Brian Dean says 45-13 Gamecocks. I'd take that score in a heartbeat. Bruin Nation says 35-13 Furman keeps us off the field with slow play. Yeah, I could see that, Bruin Nation. I could definitely. I mean, I think that's going to be their game plan. So, Madison Duncan, I'd love to hear from some of the players calling in. That would be fun. Madison Duncan, you want players to call in immediately following their game. Yeah, good luck with that. Steve Fink would have a conniption. Truly. All right, let's jump to the phone lines here.
Call from
Peyton.
Peyton, what's going on, man? How are you?
Good. How about yourself, Chris? What do you say, man?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I appreciate you asking. What's going on?
So, you're requesting predictions. Do you mind if I give you mine?
Go ahead.
So, I think USC gets held under 40. However, I think we hold Furman to under 25. So, that being said, I think my final prediction is going to be, I'm thinking 38-24 or 38-21. I think at the end of the first quarter, I think it's going to be a one-score game and everybody's going to be shitting themselves. But I think going into the half, we'll stretch it to a two-score, and then we'll kind of take control of it in the third quarter and ease on into it in the fourth. But I think Furman's going to come out aggressive, balls to the wall. They have nothing to lose. They have everything to gain off of this game. And South Carolina really doesn't have all that much to gain, but they got a whole hell of a lot to lose if you lose this game on Saturday. So that being said, I feel like South Carolina is going to come out with a sense of urgency, and Furman is as well. But I think it's going to look more like, as you keep saying, I feel like it's going to look more like a SEC team versus a FCS team. I think that'll reign true at the end of the day.
And that's the key right there, as you mentioned, Peyton, is South Carolina looking like an SEC team playing an FCS team. That's the goal. I think that is the thing Gamecock fans want to see more than anything, right? We pose the question of what margin of victory will it take for you to feel better about South Carolina moving forward, going into SEC play. But it's more about, because I don't think there's a number, right? Whether you win by 28 or 48 or 68, it's not really going to change your mind on what this season is or could be or what have you, because SEC play is going to define you. But it's about South Carolina coming out from the jump looking like an SEC football team and looking like an SEC football team, taking on, with all due respect, a very good FCS team, but an FCS team. Like, if South Carolina even struggles early and is struggling by the half and the game is close, but more importantly, South Carolina in the trenches is like fighting for their lives to scratch and claw for 3 or 4 yards a carry or slow down the Furman rushing attack, that's going to be a cause for concern. So it's about how it looks more than anything. Obviously, it needs to be in victory, but how it looks, and South Carolina establishing that we are the SEC team, you are the FCS team, and there was a major difference there.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to exploit that difference. Going into the half, I would not be surprised if we see something crazy like a 14-7 going into the half. But I'm thinking it's going to be more closer to a 21-7 or maybe even a 24-7. I think it's going to be, like I said, I think at the end of the first quarter might be rough, just considering with how much fire Furman's going to be coming into this game with.
Mm-hmm.
But I think as time rolls on and as the SEC bodies keep coming in, I think we'll seize control late, or maybe not necessarily late. I think we'll start to seize control in the second and kind of ride that on to victory. In terms of offense, man, what I want to see is, I touched on it a little bit yesterday. I want to see some new bodies, man. I want to hear some new names. I want to hear some different guys catching passes. I want to see what our talented freshmen look like. I want to see what Mazeo Bennett has to offer in the garnet and black. I definitely want to see what Omega Blake has to offer, because that's the one guy. I mean, we haven't heard any injuries about him this whole offseason, have we?
No. I think he's good to go.
Yeah, and for a guy that you heard so much off-season hype about, especially when fall camp rolled around, you gotta wonder why he's not even. I mean, I don't even remember seeing him on the field all that much, much less getting targets.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's got to be fixed, unless there's a major question mark that is behind the scenes that nobody knows about. Maybe he's just not ready to play, but I just don't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe that about Dontavius Braswell either. I think both of those guys have a lot to offer, and I think Saturday's time to show it.
Well, and if they're not ready to play, it's complete malpractice on that coaching staff. You know what I mean? Like, I love Beamer. I love Beamer, but I'm going to call it as is, man. Like, Montario Hardesty is working on borrowed time at this point. He really is. I don't know what more you really need to see. And again, we've had JC talk about this, and I know that for obvious reasons, right? He can't just come out and say, hey, fire Montario Hardesty. But guess what? I can. I can. So I'm not going to say fire Montario Hardesty and like make some huge deal about it, but like, it's becoming pretty obvious what the weak link on the coaching staff is. Becoming pretty obvious.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And, for Pete Limbo was a new hire, right? I mean, Shane Beamer came in and got a whole new staff, right? Everybody's new. Nobody's from Muschamp era, right?
Right.
So when you have such a massive hit on special teams, now granted, the last name Beamer, he's going to have an eye for special teams coaches. That's just how it is. But you struck out on your first OC. It remains to be seen on your second OC. And I'll agree with you 100%. Hardesty has I'm not saying fire him, but I'm definitely not saying if we don't get it together and start averaging at least 100 rushing yards a game, because I think that's more than reasonable to expect. 100 rushing yards a game. I'm not saying 200. I'm not saying be Clemson's rushing offense. I'm saying simply average 85 to 120 rushing yards a game. If we can't do that, Montario Hardesty's got to go. And it's to a point where, like you said earlier in the show, Dak Joyner should have never been asked to be put in this position. He should have never been RB1. We should have had recruits lined up, ready to go. We should have had a multitude of things should have happened to prevent us having to ask Dakereon Joyner, a 6-year quarterback wide receiver, to transfer into that RB1 spot. That's just, like you say, you like to use that word malpractice. I think that's a bit of malpractice going on when you have to ask a guy like that to do what he's asked to do. I think that just it speaks to what a lousy job has been going on in terms of the running back room since Beamer's taken over. But
Indeed.
I got full faith in Beamer to work it out. I just hope to see it sooner rather than later. I'll say that. So
no doubt. So you got 38-24 or 38-21, I think you said, right? Is your pick?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll stick with 38-21 for the
Okay,
Cox.
fair enough.
Yeah, I'll stick with that. But I will not be surprised if it's a 38-28 ball game or it's a 38-31 ball game. I will not be surprised, but I will be definitely disappointed. I'll say that. But 38-21, lock it in. I'll holler at you more this week, Chris. Thanks, man. I appreciate you answering the call as always. I love talking to you, man. I love the show. Huge fan as always. Try to stay cool out here, man. Thanks for his up show. Go Cox, buddy. Appreciate it.
Peyton, I appreciate you, man. Always a pleasure. Appreciate the call, and he's locked in 38-21. What do y'all say? And I think, again, great points made about Montario Hardesty, the running back position. Bryce Jeffcoat says, God bless DK, though. He loves his school. He does. He does indeed. Rumor Nation, Hardesty should have been fired in the offseason. I don't disagree with that at all. Don't disagree with that at all, my friend. John Edwards says, Dale sucks. Find some joy, John. Find some joy. Marion R26. Let's see if our defense can clog up the middle and stop the run. I see Furman running the ball a lot. Jacob E., if this is only a 2-score game at the half, the fans are gonna riot. I mean, Jacob E., I think there's a real chance it's a 17-10 game at halftime. You don't think so? South Carolina starts slow anyways. I think it could absolutely be a 1-score game. Yeah, for sure. Chase Floyd says 35-20 Carolina. Austin Gregory says, Chris, I seen where you posted asking what margin of victory we needed for you to be impressed. What amount of points allowed would impress you with our defense given the opponent? I think if South Carolina's defense held Furman to 2 touchdowns or less, I'd be pretty happy with that. I'd be pretty impressed with that because they're a good offense. They're a good offense. Dominic Roberto is a fantastic running back. Tyler Huff is a real dude at quarterback. So they've got a capable offensive line. If you hold them to 2 touchdowns or less, I think that's a really solid outing. So Justin Bryant says 38-17 South Carolina. Furman will score first and fans will panic. Well, that's a great guarantee, Justin, that if Furman scores first, fans will undoubtedly panic. Nick says 41-13 South Carolina. Okay, I would take that. Robert Hastings says 38-17. Book it. Book it indeed. Austin Gregory prediction, Spencer Rattler breaks the single game passing record this weekend, 510 yards. Jake Bentley, 2018 against Clemson. So you think Spencer Rattler throws for over 510? That would be something. That would be something. We'll see. Justin Martin says, Chris, Coach White feels the heat. And I think there is heat indeed. Madison Duncan prediction, South Carolina 45, Furman 14. I would also take that in a heartbeat. Let's see. Brian Dean says Xavier Legette has arrived. No doubt. Let's see. Continuing through your questions. Bruin Nation says, Chris, did you see the Freddie Kitchens comments? I did. Dude, here's the thing. I don't take a lot from that. Like, do you actually think Freddie Kitchens wasn't going to use the knowledge he had from his time at South Carolina in that game? I mean, I don't think it's like some crazy thing. And as my good friend Brad Crawford says, if he did steal signals to recognize formations, that's on South Carolina staff for not changing things up, right? I mean, absolutely. Absolutely, bro. It falls on Shane Beamer and his coaching staff if they allowed Freddie, which they did. Freddie Kitchens went to UNC back in February. I remember when that happened, and I was like, well, that's kind of interesting, right? But if they didn't change up signals, if they didn't change anything up, you know what? South Carolina, you played yourself. Shane Beamer, you played yourself. The joke is on you at that point. Justin Bryant, Chris, do you think the Nick Emanwari injury is a serious one? No, I don't. I don't think it's serious. But with a hamstring, you can never be too careful, Justin. So I think the wise move would be to sit Nick Emanwari this week. I do. Gabe Hurst says, Rattler throws 4 touchdowns. We win 49-28 with Furman scoring 1 in garbage time. Jacob E., if this was week 1, you can excuse a slow start, but since you got blasted on both sides of the ball week 1, you better come out and dominate against a lesser team. We'll see. We will see. I will not be surprised if South Carolina gets off to a slow start. Greg says, I think we hold Furman to 20 points or less. And back to what I was just saying, guys, nothing with South Carolina athletics anymore surprises me. Nothing. Coach Ford says, if we give up 21 plus to Furman, we are in for a long season. Jeff Gullidge says, what is the state of the program if we end September at 1-4? Which, Jeff, to your point, that's realistic. Like, that's dude, we're already staring down the barrel of 2-3 best case. So could 1-4 happen? Yeah. What's the state of the program if you end September at 1-4? Dude, I think a lot of Gamecock fans' patience is going to be tested. I really do. And, you know, I'm torn on it because I don't think it is a smart move to, like, be talking about coaches' job statuses and firing, or, you know, talking about firing coaches in 3 years. But I think what frustrates fans is you see other schools turning things around quickly. You do. I mean, guys, I mentioned this back in January, I believe. Or maybe it wouldn't have been the week of the Tennessee game. So it was back in January. Yes, South Carolina beat Tennessee 63-38. And that is an awesome, awesome thing. But why has Tennessee turned it around so much more drastically than South Carolina? Do you think that Josh Heupel inherited that much better of a situation, that much better of a scenario than Shane Beamer? I mean, do you think so? But what they've done in that amount of time versus what Shane Beamer and company have done. Just saying, it frustrates people. And I get it. Guys, we're going to jump into one final break. On the other side, we'll close out the show in style. More of your questions, comments, calls, and more here on this Thursday. You're tuned in to The Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle Dougie Ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Thursday, September the 7th, 2023. Your questions continue to roll in, so let's get right back to them. Justin Martin says, Chris, what is the future of South Carolina athletics? Justin, if I knew the future, I would stop what I'm doing, go get a lottery ticket, play the numbers, and be a millionaire. So be a billionaire, I should say. Let's see. Austin Gregory, what school who doesn't have a celebrity as a head coach or a national title is turning things around faster than SC? I believe we need to know our place in the college football world before we get upset about this. Austin, Josh Heupel, maybe ring a bell. No, I hear what you're saying though. I get it. I get it. Ethan K, was UNC our Florida game from last year? Ethan K, let me respond to your question with a question. Why do we need to get embarrassed for a light bulb to click on and play our best? Can you answer that for me? Riddle me that. Let's see. Austin Gregory, yes, I did see where Jadarius Perkins, Florida defensive back, is entering the portal after one game. This comment made me laugh. Dave Garrick says, if I'm Rattler's agent, I'm telling him if Furman gets 2 sacks, stay down after the third and wait for pro day. That made me laugh. That really made me laugh. Let's see. Brewer Nation, NIL saved Norvell. He just capitalized on it, man. Transfer portal. He got with the times. Those who adapt thrive. Those who don't die. Brewer Nation, Beamer definitely needed to hire top OC and DC being a new coach and just sell the program and let them hire their own guys and coach their teams. That's where he messed up. Brewer Nation, I also think an OC should bring his own O-line coach. Yoda says, I have a question. Do you think as an NIL monthly contributor, should we know where our contributions are funding? And should it be based on positional needs, the allocation of NIL funds? Yoda, that is a much better question for JC Sherbert, somebody who runs a collective. I think having as much transparency as possible would be a good thing. But JC's a guy, or anybody with, any of the other collectives could answer that question much more in depth. Jeff Gullidge says, let's all be honest, wouldn't even be a topic at Beamer and Company sign better linemen and running backs in the transfer portal this past offseason. That was a major failure on them facing the consequences. I mean, it was. I mean, there's just no other way to put it, man. There's no other way to put it. It was. Yeah. It was. It was. Austin Gregory, you guys are missing my entire point. What school without a national title is turning things around quicker than SC? There are none. Tennessee, Florida State, TCU, Colorado, Nebraska, and Washington all have titles. I mean, Austin, you're not wrong. Is Nebraska turning it around? Is TCU turning? Well, I guess they won the national title last year. When did TCU win a national championship? James Martin, what's the future of the Board of Trustees and Ray Tanner? As far as I know, they're not going anywhere. They are still around. They are still here. So, I mean, there's no new update on the future with that. So, it'll be a great opportunity, guys, this weekend to turn things around and get things rolling. And we'll see if they can do that. We will have much more time once the season concludes to look back on the program and examine what happens. I will say this, by the way, guys, because, our good friend Austin Gregory, he's part of the Discord, and appreciate having him. I mean, awesome takes. The beauty's always in the banter. And I'm not going to reference the exact tweet that somebody else who's in our Discord posted this morning, but I will say this because our guy Austin, it just kind of showed up on my timeline, says bashing non-professional athletes for having non-professional performances is gross. I would say this: if you are a college football fan that is used to the old way of doing things, you're about to get very uncomfortable because, I don't think that I unnecessarily bash college athletes for, we speak very critically on performances, right? But the fact of the matter is this, and this in this NIL world, if you're not performing, and especially if you're a high-profile NIL guy, like let's say you're a Spencer Rattler, or you're a this guy, that guy, and you're not performing, guys, talking heads are going to speak on you just like they speak on players in the NFL. It is what it is, man. And that might be wrong, but right, wrong, or indifferent, once people are getting paid, nobody gives a damn anymore. Like, you're getting paid. Your feelings, there's no room for it. So if I want to sit here and say that Sidney Fugar played like trash Saturday, then I can. And like I've had people come at me though saying that I criticize and critique the college athletes. Like, bro, they are getting paid. You want me to have sympathy? No, absolutely not. Give it a rest. Give it a break. I don't disagree with don't take personal attacks and don't take low blows and low shots. But, I prided myself on this before NIL was a thing. Like, I'm the first one to run and promote your Heisman campaign, but I'm also going to be the first one to, if you play like shit, like it's going to be called out, flat out. So I agree with what you're saying, Austin, because Austin Gregory is backing his claim here. Bashing and criticism are different, in my opinion. Personal attacks aren't constructive. Criticism looks bad on the program. Has throw some stats up, talk ball, don't tear a dude down for trying to promote the brand despite a loss. That's 100% personal and not football related. Austin, I'm not totally disagreeing with you. And again, that's not what I do. I'm just saying, as a whole, college football fans are going to start to get very, very uncomfortable because the bottom line is, if you're going to listen, Austin, and everybody else, by the way, but if you're going to ask fans of these individual schools, this is not just a South Carolina thing. This is a college football thing. If you're going to ask fans to funnel money into a payroll, and then the players that you acquire via that payroll, and I'm not saying Sidney Fugar is one of them. I'm speaking more in generalities. But you're going to ask fans to funnel money into a payroll, and then that team that's assembled via that payroll stinks. Fans are not going to hold back. They're just not going to hold back, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them. Pressure makes diamonds. You either perform the standard. As a consumer, you either give the consumer what they're paying for, or you make a change, or you're going to hear about it. That's it. That bottom line, that's it. Bottom line, that's it. Austin Gregory says, I'm passionate about giving these dudes a fair shot. We've only seen 1 week. He ended up being a top 3. One of our top 3 guys on the line because the line's that bad. And Austin, again, I'm not saying you're wrong, Austin, because listen, doing what I do, as long as I've done it, like I've learned, like, for example, the tweet that I'm referencing that one of our folks in the Discord posted, I would never do that because I know better. You know what I mean? I know there's nothing to gain from saying that, even if you think it's a silly thing. Like, if you think what we're talking about, guys, in case you missed it, like guys posting highlights or whatever after a terrible loss, like, even if you think that's slapdickery, I'm not going to highlight that from my end because I gain nothing out of it. Now, we'll speak about the offensive line. We'll speak about an individual player not playing well for sure, but you got to pick and choose your battles. So, Austin, I hear your points. I'm just making the point that You can say college football's, it's a non-professional, they're non-professionals. Maybe it's not the NFL, but amateurism is a joke, and amateurism is out the door. They're only going to class at this point because they have to. College football is the furthest thing from amateurism. It may not be the NFL, but at this point, it feels like it's closer to that than not. So whether that makes you like college football more or less, or you're indifferent, it's just kind of the reality, the way this game's evolving. And I mean, you're seeing it. That's what we talked about earlier this week with the Deion Sanders, the cutthroat mentality. It's a dog-eat-dog world, and when you're getting paid to win and put the best product on the field, you don't have time for people's feelings and hey, the days of that are over. The days of that are over. You got to put together the best roster and win as many games as possible, and it might make some people uncomfortable in the process. All I'm saying. Guys, we've hit 3 o'clock. Hey, appreciate you all tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that bell icon so you get notifications when we drop new video content. Also, hit the subscribe button on the podcast side of things, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to stay tuned to all the content bleeding out of the eyeballs. Guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. Y'all have a great rest of your Thursday, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.